Chapter 145. Start with the Body, Part 2-2. Translator, Strivon. Xiu Lei coughed. Gym Master. Xiu Lei was a bit flustered. He understood Luo Nan's thoughts. Frankly speaking, anything involving formatting theory was a sensitive topic. He was really afraid of Luo Nan becoming furious, turning around and leaving. Xiu Lei wanted to do his best to save the situation, and he wished that Zhu Shenyu would not say things so bluntly. At least leave some leeway for mediation. Unfortunately, the message conveyed by Zhu Shenyu's dark eyes could not be stopped. It was sent, and there was a near-zero chance that Zhu Shenyu would withdraw his remark with his temperament. The Tai Kai ball continued to roll in the bowl tray. Amidst a rumbling sound, the design on the surface gradually lit up and became clear. Zhu Shenyu turned his gaze to look at it, signaling that he had no further intentions to speak. As for Luo Nan, his gaze rested on Zhu Shenyu's face. Luo Nan had been like this since Zhu Shenyu had said, without a doubt. Luo Nan didn't make any other movements. He just stood there in place like a statue. Even his breathing seemed to have stopped. Xiu Lei looked to his left, then he looked to his right. In the end, there was nothing he could do. He just hung his head and prayed to himself. He hoped that God would open his eyes and prevent trouble from arising at all costs. For a time, the only movement in the spacious room was the constant rolling of the Tai Kai ball. It rolled from the words and thoughts of a person to the words and thoughts of another person. An unknown amount of time passed, and Luo Nan, whose entire body had been frozen, suddenly walked forward a single step. He raised a single hand to cut open the incorporeal layer of stone that froze him, and he reached out to press against the rolling Tai Kai ball. The metal sphere rubbed against the palm of his hand, and the metal sphere jiggled twice due to the uneven distribution of external force. The metal sphere nearly flipped out from the bowl tray, but it just barely stabilized. It now rocked back and forth in the bowl tray, and the luminous patterns on the sphere's surface naturally faded away without a trace. Zhu Shenyu frowned for a moment, then raised his eyes to lock gazes with Luo Nan. This was bad. The gym master didn't like other people disturbing him when he was fiddling with the Tai Kai ball. Xiu Lei's heart began to beat wildly. He simply wanted to cry faced with the situation before his eyes, but no tears could come out. He never expected the situation to unfold like this when he had invited Luo Nan to come to the Jiaoguan and learn breathing techniques. But the situation developed in a way that was not as pessimistic as Xiu Lei was imagining. Luo Nan did not become furious because of the criticism toward formatting theory, and Zhu Shenyu did not become angry at Luo Nan for stopping the Tai Kai ball from rotating. As the monotonous sound of rolling faded away, Luo Nan spoke with a low voice of increasing clarity. Gym Master Xiu, the only flaw in my technique is that it doesn't consider the human body. Am I right? I don't believe that it is your technique. Zhu Shenyu reached out a hand as well. He pressed against the Tai Kai ball, applying similar force for the second time, while Luo Nan found it hard to accept these words from Zhu Shenyu yet again. Two people had their palms pressed against the Tai Kai ball, and the metal sphere became all the more still. It did not move an inch. Through this subtle power play, Zhu Shenyu gave a slow answer. In worldly cultivation, the right path should come from the inside to the outside. From me to him. Water travels in accordance to the terrain of the mountain. Breath and energy move due to the human body, and grace and beauty are found within. If such a marvelous spectacle occurs outside the body, then what business do I have? Zhu Lei's head was spinning from listening to the antonomasia of yous and eyes, but Luo Nan could understand each of Zhu Shenyu's words with clarity. The words related to Luo Nan directly involved a concept that Luo Nan was most familiar with. I, me, my, the self. This time around the concept was heard in quite an ironic manner. Luo Nan's grandfather had written down a 20-word secret mantra in his notebook. Every clause began with a my. My heart's a prison, my heart's a furnace. My heart calls for a lens, my heart calls for the nation. Wasn't formatting theory rooted in the self? The self had to exist. It was because of this that Luo Nan refuted Zhu Shenyu's words without thinking. No way. When I cultivate, it all involves me as the axis. Do you have anything to ascertain that it is truly the self? Zhu Shenyu gave Luo Nan no chance for further explanation. He immediately shattered his following defenses. Cultivating for the self will allow the human body a structure and will allow the circulation of blood and energy. There are changes between movement and stillness. Physicality will inevitably be exhausted unless you sufficiently prepare. Only in this way will a mark be left with every step. Only in this way can errors be avoided. This is what you haven't done. Luo Nan stopped talking. He listened attentively in silence. It is inevitable and logical for one to tread wrongly on their journey by relying on pure consciousness for a foundation that lacks all materiality. For others, once the body and soul imbalance reaches a certain degree, the body and soul impeding each other are unable to progress a single step. But for you, the towering glacial mountains are expanding layer upon layer without any sign of their limits. Zhu Shenyu did not expound further from this point. The meaning was clear and could not be mistaken. No matter how grand and powerful the framework on the mental plane is, its core mechanism of growth and decline isn't related to the person himself. How can it be described as yours? Luo Nan's brows were deeply furrowed as he stared at the Tai Kai ball. He was lost in thought. Soon the room entered a state of silence once more. Zhu Lei could not refrain from saying, "If you truly have this problem, then we have to make some adjustments. Gym Master, can we fix this?" Zhu Lei's choice of words were tactful, but Zhu Shenyu responded quite bluntly, "External techniques cannot be used for the sake of oneself. It is not too late to start from scratch and walk toward the correct path." Luo Nan lifted his head upon hearing him. He gazed straight at Zhu Shenyu with a face devoid of all expression. Zhu Lei saw that the situation was going on a bad trend. He scrambled forward and grabbed Luo Nan's right arm. "We can think over this some more." Luo Nan knew what Zhu Lei was nervous about, but he really was not angry. He was just thinking about his grandfather. Zhu Shenyu's thin, decrepit body was somewhat similar to his grandfather's. Luo Nan's thoughts floated to the medical treatment center. An insane old man was over there, and the old man's ailments had tormented him into something inhuman. His life was also near its end. What had caused all of this? Luo Nan was not a doctor. He found it impossible to make an accurate assessment. However, right now there existed a fact that was as clear as day. Before, the hospital was able to confirm that energy and stimulation were useless in the attempts to improve the old man's illness. However, Luo Nan's grandfather was likely a practitioner of formatting theory. If Luo Nan were to recognize the flaws of formatting theory, revisions could be made upon this foundation, and the positive effects for his grandfather would likely be instant. Luo Nan's mind was in a bit of a daze right now. His thoughts transformed as fast as lightning, and the thought process was not the least bit simple. The upheaval of an undercurrent of concepts flipped the sunken grains of memories to the surface of his heart. Luo Nan had synthesized and taken drugs for the past 5 years. He did this day in and day out in bitter obsession. These memories floated in turmoil. Then the silhouette of gear under the setting sun inexplicably cut into his mind. There was also the lake that faced the building, and the treehouse devoid of all traces of people. Luo Nan could not get a grasp on his own emotions for a time, but soon he made up his mind. He took a deep breath, forgot the tangling thought of whether or not formatting theory was flawed, and took a step back. He immediately turned to face Zhu Shenyu and gave him a heavy bow. The formatting theory I cultivate in is my grandfather's heart and blood. It's his life. I cannot give it up no matter the case, no matter the cause. If the Gym Master can help me mend its flaws and correct its errors, I will never forget this favor through eternity. It seemed that Zhu Shenyu was stunned for a moment as well. Then he shook his head. You are most willing to move in accordance to the technique. You should not desire to be imprisoned. Luo Nan just looked at him. Can you help me? Zhu Shenyu responded as if nothing was wrong. I'm not an expert in such visualizations. I only use the most basic method of training, practicing, and tempering. I am unable to resolve the so-called flaws and errors of your formatting theory. The most I can do is help you obtain a stronger physique, increase the endurance of your body by a bit, and increase the room for you to experiment and adjust. That's already enough, said Luo Nan without hesitation. Zhu Shenyu was direct as well. Then prepare for some pain and suffering. Chapter 146, Flexibility Lies in the Eyes, Part 1-2. Translator, Strivon. The mind and the heart gives birth to conceptions, but the mind and the heart also kills conceptions. The flexibility lies in the eyes. Luo Nan seemed to be asleep, yet not asleep, awake, yet not awake. It was as if he entered a still state of mind. He could truly see the visualization diagram rotating in the void, yet there were also countless specious shadows diffused inside and outside of it. Every shadow was a copy of his figure. They were practically everywhere, yet none of them was real. Then Luo Nan's mind sunk downward directly into the heart of the inscribed sphere. He fell into the center of the deep prison. The shadows were truly like shadows of his body. They followed him inside. Thousands upon thousands of dark chains moved simultaneously with a rattling vibrato. They weaved together into something like a net, and the light of a flame lacking all heat flickered in the deepest regions. The light illuminated layers and layers of chaos as it fused and overlapped with the myriad of shadows. It was hard to distinguish between the shadows, for they were like flocks of bats. These wraiths danced bewitchingly like clouds and waves. Me, which one is me? Luo Nan's viewpoint changed amid his daze. It was as if he was looking down from high above. He saw the rays of light pierce upward and combine with the flames in his eyes into one. Great amounts of light was released, suppressing the wraiths, and Luo Nan was suddenly awoken. Luo Nan opened his eyes. His vision was a bit fuzzy at first. Part of it was due to the dusky lighting of the room. The light of the sun could not be seen, so only the lights of the humanoid stone lanterns illuminated the entrance to the room. Light and shadow were jumbled together, and they formed outlines upon the random items within the room. The normal and ordinary image gave Luo Nan a feeling of inexplicable novelty. It could not be determined if this was a psychological effect. Luo Nan flipped over and sat up, the blanket covering him sliding off. The slight chill of early morning came flowing in from the opened entrance. It made him huddle his shoulders to cover his neck. A husky voice suddenly vibrated from the corner of the room. It was none other than Zhu Shenyu. Falseness has energy. Darkness has knowledge. There exists fields of blessing in the heart, all without raising a thought. You should go through morning procedures. Follow what you did last night. Luo Nan closed his eyes and opened them. This time the after-effects of his dream state were wiped away. He was truly clear-headed now. Luo Nan looked at his wristband. It was now a bit over 4:30 in the morning. No wonder it was so dark outside. Zhu Shenyu did not say anything after that, but Luo Nan was able to feel his gaze resting upon his body. Zhu Shenyu was supervising his task. Yes, Luo Nan's bitter days have begun starting last night. Luo Nan did not waste time talking. He settled his mind and began performing the breathing technique. The breath in his mouth and nose gradually possessed a sense of density. Luo Nan did not take the next step in circulating after finding the right tempo of breathing. He first massaged the acupoints surrounding his eye sockets. He extended his hands while sitting cross-legged, clasped them together, and massaged his feet using a special technique. Everything was done in special positions. It was just a bit ugly to look at. Harder, directed Zhu Shenyu in a timely manner. Luo Nan unconsciously exerted more force with his hand. Soon his hands and feet had warmed up, and his tendons and muscles had loosened up. Then his hands went to his back to press against its two sides. Luo Nan looked like he was doing some sort of exercise with these series of movements. Exercises for old people. Luo Nan's back was in pain as he did this, for Zhu Shenyu pressed his finger into a spot. Zhu Shenyu's voice entered his ear once more. Here, put more force here. Luo Nan's breathing was chaotic, but soon he adjusted. He bent his hand in accordance to Zhu Shenyu's request and continued to apply force. He did this until the spot felt achy and hot. This was not the end of it. Luo Nan then sat on the cork flooring, twisted his body, and stretched his hands and feet. The most important thing was for his gaze to follow his movements, regardless of his body's position. Every time there was something the least bit wrong with Luo Nan's positions and movements, Zhu Shenyu would instantly correct him with words, or even use his hands to adjust Luo Nan himself. Luo Nan went through the exercise 9 times. It might look like he never left his original position, but Luo Nan used up a great amount of stamina. A layer of sweat covered Luo Nan's body. What was especially taxing was paying attention to the position of his eyes. They always had to move along with his hands and feet. They were massaged in this way as well. Right then, Luo Nan's eyes were a bit hot, as if there was steam rising from his eye sockets. Luo Nan was on the verge of crying. Luo Nan gently closed his eyes, withdrawing and concealing his mind. His exercise only counted as a success at this point. Luo Nan had learned this series of movements last night. It was a hands-on instruction from Zhu Shenyu. Luo Nan learned to massage his head, hands, feet, and torso in this way. Luo Nan learned to stretch and twist his limbs, along with a supplementation of breathing in this way. This involved positioning, strength, feeling, response, and so on. Zhu Shenyu was meticulous down to the smallest detail. This was the basic method Zhu Shenyu spoke of. Luo Nan followed a prescribed pattern to the letter, and there was practically no room for meditation and visualization. Nothing fake could be seen from it. Zhu Shenyu told him the following. Your form is like a bowl tray. You bear heavy mass, but you're rejected outside. A strand of your mind is split, existing within this imprisonment. So a large tail obstructs action. If you want to make it right, first, you must break through the layers that separate the mind, energy, and essence. The only way starts from the human body. Strengthen the body's function to make yourself beautiful, inside and out. Cultivate your essence energy. It's like adding a flame beneath the bowl tray. Use the heat of your body to melt a corner of the glacial mountains. Separate a cup of soup out from within. If you want to reach sufficient heat, you cannot continue cultivating in a purely still state. You need to exert yourself while walking, sitting, and lying down. You need to activate and circulate the functions of your vital energy. According to Zhu Shenyu's words, Luo Nan's cultivation thus far was confined by the external technique that was formatting theory. His fleshly body was weak, and the only thing that connected the inside and the outside of the body were the 9 orifices. The 9 orifices of the body were the 2 eyes, the 2 ears, the 2 nostrils, the mouth, and the 2 lower extremities. The eyes, ears, and mouth were the most important of them, and of these the eyes were the divine master. There was a saying from the scripture of the hidden contracts: the mind and the heart gives birth to conceptions, but the mind and the heart also kills conceptions. The flexibility lies in the eyes. The essentials lay in this saying. Luo Nan's cultivation was in the mental plane. It was difficult to utilize his fleshly body. Now, he had to utilize the natural physical nature of his body. This was akin to drawing water from a stream. He had to gradually build the scale and then seek a breakthrough. Luo Nan could only understand half of Zhu Shenyu's theories. He only knew that he had to begin with the eyes, the most important orifices. Now that he thought about it, only minor abilities had manifested during his early years before he achieved his self-format. Besides the appetite king ability that strengthened his digestion and absorption rates, there was also the hypnosis master ability. This ability was really apparent. It used the eyes as a medium to terrify a person's mind. Luo Nan checked his own experiences and realized that he did make some small gains with his fleshly body. The morning exercise lasted for nearly an hour, only ending at 5:30. Luo Nan washed his face, walked back into the courtyard, and saw Zhu Lei sweeping fallen leaves in the middle of the courtyard. Luo Nan rushed to help, but Zhu Lei refused. "Save some energy. We're going to school in a bit, but there aren't any public transport routed there. Are we running there? Isn't today a bit late for you?" The distance from the Jiaoguan to Acumen College was nearly 50 kilometers. Though Luo Nan had ran such distances before, it was nearly 6 in the morning now. He did not believe that he could make it in time for his morning courses after assessing his level of energy. "Dude, your resolve is really laudable." Zhu Lei grinned and laughed as he gave Luo Nan a big thumbs up. But then he shook his head. "I'm the one running there. Right now, your body isn't suitable for large amounts of exercise. You can put up with the public bike point over here at Boshan Building." "Oh, Nanster, your complexion is looking a lot better today." Luo Nan felt good himself. The aches of his body had yet to fade away, but his mind was resolute and his spirits were clear with energy. He was completely different from yesterday. He had a general idea why. It had already been nearly a month since Luo Nan had achieved the self-format of "My Heart's a Prison" and had stopped the consistent process of synthesizing drugs. Since then, he didn't have a feasible cultivation method. Most of the time, Luo Nan had been wearily dealing with the endlessly surging growth of his soul's strength. This left Luo Nan in an utterly passive position. The few techniques he polished were scattered and sporadic. It was far from systematic. Today, he had performed real and true movements in Zhu Shenyu's Daoguan. He had made steady progress in every detail and every node. Though this might be a basic method, it was a starting point. Luo Nan was not afraid of hard work. He was just afraid of meaningless hard work. Compared to the big goal of rectifying and verifying the rights and wrongs of his grandfather's formatting theory, the tiny goal marked down by Zhu Shenyu was truly something in reach. Regardless of whether his goals were now broken down or he was reassuring himself, Luo Nan's mind became infused with energy. Quite a bit of his worries were alleviated. Concentrate the gaze to what is attainable, and light shall illuminate the earth. Do not stray, do not lose to the end. It was unknown when Zhu Shenyu had walked out, but he stood at the wooden corridor and was looking at the two youngsters. Time is getting late. Off you two go then. Chapter 146. Flexibility Lies in the Eyes, Part 2-2. Translator, Strivon. Yes, that's right. I can't make it to the hospital this morning. Luo Nan rode a bike as he asked Bai Xinyan to take this treatment session off. His breathing was heavy and a cold wind caused him to choke. He coughed a few times. Bai Xinyan's ears shot up. She had a rough understanding of Luo Nan's current situation. Early morning exercise A. Pay attention to your amount of exercise. Right now, your condition is stable, so it's fine to miss a treatment session once in a while. Oh, right. How did learning the sleeping skill go? Luo Nan responded with grunts and groans. He didn't say much. Bai Xinyan didn't inquire any further. She soon hung up. From her attitude, it seemed like she was determined to carry out the happy-go-lucky treatment until the end. Luo Nan took deep panting breaths, which formed faint white mist in the cold, crisp morning. It was now 7:20 in the morning. He was still a street away from his destination, Acumen College, but the last of his physical energy had been squeezed clean from these 2 hours of cycling. Zhu Lei was even beating him ahead. At that moment, Luo Nan's thighs felt paralyzed, his calves spasming, and his chest and back were drenched in sweat. He lacked even the strength to stand up on the bike. Zhu Lei glanced back at him and slowed down a bit. It was obvious that Zhu Lei still had energy in the tank. Luo Nan was envious of his friend, who was like a tireless beast. Zhu Lei had ran a distance of 50 kilometers straight up with vitality. He ran the whole way like a long-distance runner, during which he changed his running style several times. He frequently punched out with his fists or kicked out with his legs. He jumped between stories to keep on going forward. The amount of exercise he did and the amount of energy he consumed had to exceed the cycling Luo Nan by a dozen-fold. Though the two's pace slowed down at the moment, Zhu Lei, with his distance ahead, increased the intensity of his movements. Fists and sleeves could be heard tearing through the air right next to him. He was simply dripping with sweat as he subjected himself to crazy training. If Zhu Lei did this every day, Luo Nan could understand why Zhu Lei had such astonishing strength. So astonishing that even Zhang Yingying and the other awakened all praised him highly. Speaking of which, today, Luo Nan had been roused by Zhu Lei's rhythm and had thus brought out a competitive spirit within him. Luo Nan felt embarrassed being beat by a runner while he was cycling, now that he thought about it. At last, Zhu Lei's morning exercise came to an end. He collected himself, exhaled deeply, and switched to walking with large strides. Perhaps Zhu Lei felt Luo Nan's gaze, for he turned to look at Luo Nan. "Nanster, please don't be offended. It's hard for me to talk and split my attention when I train." Indeed, Zhu Lei spoke practically not a word the entire journey. This was rather different from his straightforward and talkative nature. "It's nothing, things are quite nice this way." Luo Nan really admired Zhu Lei. He spoke emotionally. When it comes to training, doesn't one have to devote their entire concentration to it? Zhu Lei didn't immediately respond. He sized up Luo Nan a few times and split his lips into a grin. The gym master says this often: the opportunity to train and cultivate is number one. If one can't grasp an opportunity, then nothing is worth mentioning. Luo Nan was stumped. He really couldn't think of the relevancy of these words. He couldn't help asking, what sort of meanings are contained in those words? The gym master had said a few things while teaching breathing techniques in previous sessions. "I'll give you the rundown." Then Zhu Lei spoke with a swaying and bobbing head. "The human body possesses the breathing of life. Heaven and earth also possess the breathing of life. We as people are insignificant. We are short-sighted. We can only see what is in front of us. We concentrate only on our own inhalation and exhalation. The breathing of heaven and earth can only be found in the middle of the long, hazy river of time. We are unable to see the passage of time. It is difficult for us to harmonize our breathing with the breathing of heaven and earth, but we can be sailors. With our bodies as boats, we can sail on the billowing waves of the river of time. Through fine work, we can capture the dribs and drabs of the directions of the winds and the power of the waters. Ultimately, the breath of heaven and earth can be used to aid the breath of a single person. The true meaning of cultivation is when the speed of the boat prevails over the speed of the waters, regardless of the flow and the waves. Of this, the directions of the winds and the power of the waters are opportunities. The accumulation of many sands make a tower. The amassing of trees make a forest. Gathering several small forces make a large force. One by one, they answer upon the body and soul. Powerful capabilities. The transformation of vital energy. Do you understand? Zhu Lei wasn't quite certain of Luo Nan's comprehension near the end. Luo Nan grunted. He knew that Zhu Lei wanted to let him know a few things. These things were probably focus, perseverance, and so on, but the concrete details weren't clear to him. Zhu Lei smiled. "I didn't understand when I first heard these words. Then the gym master explained them to me. We're all steering boats, traveling the river of time. It is hard for us to avoid being surrounded by perils. In ancient times, the boatmen of rivers had to spend a great deal of energy to avoid being wrecked when encountering dangerous rapids and torrents. They spent a great deal of mental energy exploiting the nature of water. This was essential. Training and cultivation may look like it involves only the tempering of one's strength, but in fact, it demands the forging of one's willpower. The mind is what suffers, and regardless of whether it's normal training or facing a foe in battle, the mind comes before energy, and energy comes before strength. This concerns the importance of consumption and loss. It is logical for them to go down in this descending order. Luo Nan looked at Zhu Lei. He was finally able to confirm something this time. In this bicycle ride, didn't his physical energy consumption far exceed his mental energy consumption? The bodily functions of his entire body had reached their limits, but his mind was still very lively. From Zhu Lei's perspective, was his mental concentration lacking? Was Zhu Lei criticizing him? This was the most tactful Zhu Lei could be with his honest nature. Then, the weary feeling through Luo Nan's body became a bit prickly. Even his panting breaths became hot. Zhu Lei was concerned that he spoke too far. He subconsciously waved his hand, but he himself was a bit nervous. Nanster, actually I. How should the mind be used for it to be focused? What would be sensible? Asked Luo Nan seriously. He wasn't going to let Zhu Lei just say nonsense. Luo Nan wouldn't be mad at his friend for something as little as this. He just really didn't understand. It was reasonable to say that he had learned and practiced with extreme commitment from last night until now. He didn't let his mind wander, nor did he goof off at all. Zhu Lei let out a breath of relief when he saw that Luo Nan was behaving quite well. He rushed to explain, "Nanster, you really have been diligent, but you're not quite familiar with the ways within. Your diligence is crude. You need to know that walking, sitting, and lying down are all forms of cultivation. Every single movement must be made diligently and must be made with intent. You're cultivating in the eye's orifice. The eyes are the light of the mind. The eyes must follow the heart. Every single movement of the hands and feet must correspond with your sight." Luo Nan looked at his hands and feet. He laughed bitterly, "But I'm cycling, man. Everything flourishes, then reverts to their roots. The movements of the hands and feet can all be seen from the dantian, 2 inches below the navel. These are just small tricks. What is truly hard is to look at yourself, look at your person, without losing a strand, without missing a drop. Look from the outside to in. Return to the roots and return to destiny. Only then can you know what it means for the heart lantern to shine, what it means for strength to be near unattainable. Only then can you know where to apply your diligence, and only then can you know true pain and suffering." Zhu Lei coughed. "The gym master forbade me from saying these things until we got to this spot." The last few words underpinned the whole explanation. Luo Nan was dazed for a moment. His gaze moved away from Zhu Lei's body, and he first looked at his clothes that were nearly drenched clear with sweat. He then raised his head and looked at the pedestrians coming and going on the road. Most of the pedestrians were students at this place, but they were of all kinds of figures and colors. There were many, and they were jumbled together. Luo Nan's mental clairvoyance gave an approximate calculation of 700 to 800 people on this road. This skill of his was rare even in an awakened. A normal person was far inferior to him. But if he were to go down in detail, look at the movements of their hands and feet, and observe the changing bodies without missing a single wisp, focusing on the 5 or 6 people coming and going around him was enough to exhaust him both mentally and physically, let alone the entire street. Of course, there was himself as well. The requirement was precision and detail. Did he really have to take every flesh, nerve, reaction, and change of his entire body and incorporate them into his cognitive process? Was this attainable by a human? Was this the only way for it to count as cultivation? Luo Nan had a foot down from his bike. He stood there, lost in the stream of people. Within his contemplation, he gained a whole new understanding of what Zhu Shenyu meant when he said, "Prepare for some pain and suffering." Chapter 147, Dragon Spits a Pearl, Part 1-2. Translator, Strivon. Luo Nan sat on some stone steps with a loose-leaf notebook resting on his knee, placed in a comfortable angle. Behind him was a classical-style auditorium that blocked half of the sun. The warm rays of the sun and the chilly shadow of the building were placed side by side. He sat right at the border where light and shadow crossed, and he faced a complicated ambient lighting. His half-squinting eyes were focused on the tip of his pen. They moved together in strokes along the paper's surface to create neat characters one after another. The breathing of life of heaven and earth is the format of heaven and earth. The breathing of life of the human body is the format of the self. To display effects of the infinitesimal self format with the vast and hazy heaven and earth format requires not only a great match in strength, but a look into the details. Before, I did things too crudely, too stupidly. He lifted his head upon writing to this point. His gaze cut across the flow of people outside the large auditorium. It was now time for school society activities. The number one area with the greatest congregation of students was near the large auditorium, near the Nan River bank. The ages of the people spanned several years. From tall to short, from big to small, from beautiful to ugly, from male to female, all sorts of people came and went, forming a motion picture. 10 days ago, Luo Nan would have sketched out a drawing with his observations. He would capture a few interesting people of the here and the now in drawings with typical characteristics. 3 days ago, Luo Nan would have striven to commit everybody who fell in his vision to memory. He would have memorized their facial features, their movements, their clothes, their relationships with each other, and so on. He would have classified them with great detail and precision. Luo Nan was currently sitting on the steps of the large auditorium. He swept his gaze around and selected 10 people out of the several hundred people below him. These 10 were at different locations. Some were male, some were female. They were not necessarily in the same grades or societies. However, in the following half-minute, these same 10 people brushed past Luo Nan's side as they climbed up the steps of the auditorium. These 10 people passed the closest to Luo Nan compared to other people. They came in the order he predicted, and he made not a single mistake until the last 2. He made an error for the first time because one of them answered a call. Not bad, 80%. No one else could see it, but Luo Nan was absolutely clear. Every time a person approached him starting from a distance of 2 meters away, the muscles of his body would tense and relax, and his pores would open and close. He was instantly alert to ensure that he could jump up and react in a single breath every time a person came near him. Although his vigilance and preparation to react at a moment's notice was covert, it used up quite a deal of energy. A thin layer of sweat appeared upon his body by the time these 10 people passed him, and his breathing became a bit uneven. It consumed a lot of physical energy, but it consumed even more mental energy. This 80% success rate wasn't due to luck. It was from observing several hundred people's body language, direction of pace, and location and distance. Luo Nan began from the largest to the smallest, from the outside to the inside, to make his judgments. This was none other than what Gym Master Xiu meant when he said, "With the self as the master, observe oneself and observe others through illumination." Luo Nan wasn't a video recorder. He wasn't an inanimate object. He was a living person. Every sight captured by his eyes had to correspond to his own body. He had to clarify the key information and discern this information into different levels of priority. This included prediction, preparation, and reaction. Therefore, cultivating the eye's orifice was never just about cultivating the eyes. It was using the eye cavity as a guide to meld mental and physical energy, vital energy, and the body into a single furnace. This was a systematic undertaking. This was a marvelous cultivation method involving a single-point levering and moving the entire body. Luo Nan spent nearly a week's worth of time before he could understand it. Then, he used 3 more days to consolidate his foundation. It could be said that he finally started after the 10th day. Luo Nan thought about his cultivation progress and couldn't bear to go back in time. Luo Nan was required to maintain high levels of sharpness. It was totally impermissible for him to get distracted or be lost in thought. In the beginning, he couldn't determine the priority levels of information in an accurate manner. Aside from that, he felt that he wasn't using his eyes meticulously enough. He hated that he couldn't engrave everything within his vision into his mind. It seemed that he wouldn't be able to reach Gym Master Xiu's standard of a bitter cultivation if he didn't do this. At all times, he had to completely concentrate and torment his mind until both his strength of vision and mental capacity were squeezed clean. Luo Nan's eyeballs felt achy and swollen just recollecting. His reflex was about to make him shed tears, but perhaps he should simply close his eyes, lie down, and take a nap. Napping was one of the greatest pleasures in the world, after all. Bai Xinyan saw Luo Nan like this, and practically cancelled all of the Frost River waterway exercises. According to her, Xiu Shenyu's torture was much more effective in exhausting Luo Nan's soul strength than anything else. He was simply like a lantern burning through the last bit of oil. Luo Nan might not even make it by the time Dr. Clay, whose schedule was constantly delayed, gets over to Xia City. Luo Nan might even breathe his last. Luo Nan knew that he was walking a skewed path, but Gym Master Xiu spoke as softly as a feather. Balance is what's desired. First know the bounds and ends, then increase or decrease the scale. It was fine for a beginner to be fearless of excessiveness for a time. All right, Luo Nan will remember to increase or decrease the scale for a lifetime. Luo Nan flipped through his notebook until he reached the page with the flexible e-ink screen. He opened up a spreadsheet and entered the training results from this instance. Then, he went to his diary page and wrote, October 25th, 1,000 people training has been completed. Total success rate is 72.2%. Dividing the training into sections, the middle section has a success rate of 55.6% and the end section has a success rate of 19%. Luo Nan finished doing some basic data analysis and closed his notebook. The surrounding pedestrians gave him strange looks, but Luo Nan ignored them. He took out a medicine bottle and applied some eye drops to his eyes. After that, he massaged his face. A slight chill soaked into his eye sockets, and instantly some steam rose through the air. The medicine, which had a moistening function, had permeated inside to fuse with Luo Nan's vital energy. The liquid medicine was the product of a secret recipe given to him by Gym Master Xiu. Octopus Bro concocted it for him, and it could alleviate the fatigue of the eyes. In any case, it was quite stupid of him to overexert his eyes. A person's eyes were complicated and refined structures, but in the anatomical sense, one would not be able to find the existence of the eye's orifice no matter where one looked in the eyes. The so-called eye's orifice were the eyes and their corresponding functions. This orifice interferes mutually with the mental plane to form a special structure. It was between what is real and what is imaginary. Only through this orifice could one attain the result of linking the inside with the outside and shine with spiritual radiance. It was nearly impossible for a normal person to possess the eye's orifice. Only those who possessed a certain cultivation path and those who could interfere with the mental and the material planes could slowly build it. It lay on the same vein as the shield of truth. Luo Nan had experienced the shield of truth, but it existed only as a temporary construction. The eye's orifice he was building today was like a permanent facility in comparison. Luo Nan could somewhat feel it already. Luo Nan closed his eyes. He could feel a deep pressure acting upon them. The pressure came from the format pyramid. It was his power on the mental plane. It was a side effect against his fleshly body, which was on the material plane. Other people started with nothing and grew from there when they cultivated. Only Luo Nan was substituting the fake for the real. He was taking the power imprisoned by the format, "My heart's a prison," and was shifting it to a plane where he could control it. These days of exploration and experimentation had passed, and Luo Nan felt that imprisonment wasn't a completely accurate description of his situation. It could be said that his soul strength had entered a processing assembly line, because it had to finish a sequence of processes and be turned into a fixed and finished product before it could be taken off the line. This was why his range of application was so greatly limited. Chains could be used to bind people, but it was hard to use them for embroidery. If Luo Nan wanted to take the raw materials that was his soul strength out of there, he would need to break through the barrier that was, "My heart's a prison." That was why not even an iota of efficiency remained when he tried to use his soul strength outside the range of "My heart's a prison's" applications. It was not efficient at all. It was because of this that he had such horrible results when he tried to do the soul strength activation exercises in the simulator layer of the psychic wave network. But now he was progressing in his cultivation of the eye's orifice. He could take out his soul strength, and it was manageable even if it was intermittent. This sort of technique was like grinding with water, and the material plane constantly conformed to him. It was like when dripping water would eventually cut through stone. Even if every day he could only siphon out a drop, it will still leave a mark when it's smashed down. After days and days of this, a sunken pit could be formed, and water could be accumulated to develop further step by step. What's more was the fact that Luo Nan's situation wasn't as horrible as this. Luo Nan had just half-built the eye's orifice, and he was like a pond storing water. His soul strength trickled in. All Luo Nan had to do was carefully conserve it, prevent it from evaporating or leaking. After a while, it could turn into a deep pond, a lake, and then an ocean. At this step, Luo Nan didn't need Gym Master Xiu to remind him the importance of storing his soul strength. Every day, he used 70% to temper his eye's orifice and build its structure. 30% was set aside and stored. When he closed his eyes were truly like ball bearings. They spun in his eye sockets, and they seemed cold yet not cold, hot yet not hot, warm and chilly. Their wonders were hard to describe. A mass of light appeared later on. It illuminated the interior of Luo Nan's skull and was hazy at first, akin to a candle flame on the verge of being extinguished. But Luo Nan was working hard every day, and with every day of training, some of the haziness faded away. There was progress. There was a name for this. The Soul Heart Lantern illuminates the 9 netherworlds. Gym Master Xiu said that the eye's orifice was considered a small success when the heart lantern probes down and lights the inner organs brightly. So far, Luo Nan had already built the platform for the eye's orifice. He had an outline. It was no longer a mirage. It was no longer the ravings of a lunatic. Because of this, Luo Nan was no longer fond of having his eyes open. Especially when he was alone, he would relax his eyelids and allow his eyeballs to become moist with both warmth and coolness. The glimmer that was the illuminating lantern of his heart felt excellent. He sat there with his eyes closed, yet not closed. He couldn't see anyone, and he didn't deliberately use his mental senses. Every time a pedestrian passed by him, faintly discernible traces were left upon his body. They were all revealed by the illumination of the heart lantern spreading ahead and extending behind. The light weaved and crossed, causing Luo Nan to feel like a spider at times. He had this wonderful method of knitting an incorporeal net. Every living being stirred his senses when they passed through his territory, and he responded accordingly. In comparison, the range of Luo Nan's clairvoyance on the mental plane was larger and was on a more profound level, but it didn't possess a mechanism that allowed him to purely and directly react. In her, Luo Nan suddenly shifted his shoulder, but he was a step too late. Zhu Lei had walked up behind him and pressed down with a hand. The sensations of the spider web were instantly shattered. The insect was too big. Are you using your mental senses? Nope. Luo Nan failed to react in time to Zhu Lei's approach. He was a bit depressed, so he responded to Zhu Lei in an unhappy tone. Then you saw me coming up to you from behind. The heart lantern of the eye's orifice. Observe the self and observe others through its illumination. It's only been a few days. A beginner needs to meld the mind and thaw the flesh and blood. They typically need 100 days to build their foundation and tap through to this meridian point. It took me 2 months back then. Even Zhu Lei was a bit envious as he saw Luo Nan's rate of progress. It's not finished yet, plus I already have a foundation. Hey. The gym master said early on that, although you have a deep foundation, most of it is assimilated into your external technique, formatting theory. Your body is weak as well. Logically speaking, it is easy to say that you have it harder than normal people. Today's the 25th. It's just been 10 days, and there are signs already. You're a genius. You're exaggerating. At most, I can borrow a bit of power. Luo Nan had a clear awareness of himself that others found hard to understand. It was quite a coincidence occurring in this moment. A chain of lightning suddenly cut through the sea of his mind. It flashed and disappeared, but it stirred his thoughts. His heart lantern flickered and lost its stability and smoothness, but it blazed all the brighter. He frowned, it leaked again. The grounds of the lake sea had overflowed a bit. His tiny little pond couldn't store it all. Before he could finish his thoughts, a loud voice called out from the lower steps, "Nanster Lister, I'm here." Luo Nan didn't need to look to know that it was Zai Junping. He had come to pick them up. Luo Nan dispelled his thoughts for now, stood up, walked down the flight of steps shoulder to shoulder with Zhu Lei, and got into the cart. The electric cart went around the stream of people and sped away. Chapter 147, Dragon Spits a Pearl, Part 2-2. Translator, Strivon. The electric cart sped around campus. During this time of day in Acumen College, most students were still racking their heads or pushing their bodies over school society activities. They fought fearfully for those 8 school credits a year, so the few students on the electric cart attracted the hate of the others. What a pity, none of the people sitting in the cart were aware of the other students' feelings. In a sense, they were a group truly isolated from the school. Zhu Lei sat up front next to Zai Junping. They talked about the party they were going to, and this completely unfamiliar social circle made Zhu Lei a bit curious and nervous. Zai Junping joked around as he said half-true, half-false words and teased Zhu Lei. Luo Nan sat in the back. At first he listened in to Zai Junping and Zhu Lei's conversation, but later his thoughts sunk into the heart lantern of his eye's orifice. He observed the flickering flame and the surrounding changes down to the finest detail. The heart lantern of the eye's orifice illuminated an area in the brain. The results of this cultivation practice was profound and mysterious, but it wasn't the first guest that Luo Nan housed in his skull. There was another object that orbited around the heart lantern, the external neuron. This dynamo core was like a dragon serpent wandering in his brain. It spiraled around the lantern, appearing within and disappearing out of sight. It flared with lightning as it drew near, like it was baring its fangs and brandishing its claws. It crossed the flame light of the heart lantern, shifting suddenly between eating its light in and spitting it back out. It seemed that it could swallow the whole thing in a single bite, and it was quite frightening to witness. It was hard for his heart lantern to remain lit for long in this situation, let alone exist. The sight of it wasn't the only thing that was terrifying. The first time the external neuron got near the heart lantern, the energies of the two reacted to each other. The luminescence of lightning radiating from the external neuron simply put out the flame of the heart lantern, destroying several days of bitter effort in an instant. Luo Nan had similar cases occur over 7 times in a row. He was tormented so much that he began to question life. But then the lightning cut into the heart lantern during Luo Nan's 8th moment of near despair. It aided the burning of the lantern with its powerful force, and the radiance illuminated all. This instance caused the quantity to grow by 10 times of what he had accumulated with great difficulty. After this event, the external neuron would always arrive to bombard the heart lantern with its lightning at the end of each of Luo Nan's sessions of cultivating the eye's orifice. Luo Nan would train to observe 1,000 people as targets for a day in batches of 100 people. He cultivated 10 times a day, so the lightning dragon appeared 10 times as well. The external neuron was not able to extinguish the heart lantern since then, but sometimes the tyrannical lightning would disturb and harm the luminescence and stability of the heart lantern. If Luo Nan hadn't strengthened his heart lantern several times, his progress would have likely become unsightly. Luo Nan's emotions felt rather complicated towards Zhu Lei's admirations because of this. Don't be happy looking at my progress. The results can only be looked at after each and every cultivation session. Each time there was a chance for my progress to collapse completely. The few days at the Jiaoguan allowed Luo Nan to understand what it meant to walk into flames of madness. The times when his heart lantern was extinguished happened early on. The flame's intensity wasn't strong, so the whiplash was weak, and only 2 extra days of effort were wasted. But if his heart lantern were to be extinguished now, his eye structure and his mental willpower would get damaged. Dreadfully, it might take half a year of special, attending to for recovery. His situation was tantamount to having an unstable ticking time bomb hidden in his brain, and he was the person who had placed this bomb inside. Luo Nan opened his notebook after a moment of pondering. He wrote with hooded eyes. The acrobatics of the dragon-spitting pearls is getting more and more fluent. I feel like I'm playing with fire. He thought for a bit and added a lightning behind the fire. Then he added the word ice, and he was done. He subconsciously sighed after writing these words. The analogy of a bomb wasn't a good analogy. An iceberg is more apt. It just blocked the space, hiding beneath the surface of the water, waiting for someone to crash into it. From these few days of cultivating in the eye's orifice, Luo Nan felt that the greatest gain he made was, 1. In understanding truly what sort of precision was required for cultivating, and 2. Using this precision to re-examine his process of implementing formatting theory and see whether he had made some mistakes or went on the wrong path. The answer was naturally a resounding yes. Disregarding whether or not there were flaws in formatting theory, Luo Nan had too many instances of knowing but not really knowing why when he cultivated in formatting theory. He possessed zealous faith in his grandfather's theory and walked down this path with his heart set on it. Many small links in his path were determined on their own and by their own power. So Zhu Shenyu considered formatting theory to be an external power, a power that Luo Nan was trapped and caged by. And now Luo Nan was facing a situation with the heart lantern of the eye's orifice. He had spelled a big death upon himself. The hollow depository function of the external neuron was first possible thanks to Elder Mo Lun of the Blood Flame Order. That was when Luo Nan's soul strength just exploded in growth, exacerbating the imbalance of his body and soul. Luo Nan didn't know how to handle it. Luckily, the Wraith sign had taken the place of the Blood Flame Order's human-faced arachnid and was lying under cover by Mo Lun's side. The Wraith sign acted as Luo Nan's eyes and ears, and through it, Luo Nan observed Mo Lun's techniques on soul attaching and soul sending. Luo Nan took what he learned and created distance between his body and soul. This made it so that his soul and flesh were seemingly merged, but not, and it lessened the pressure toward his fleshly body. This method was truly effective, but it had many side effects. Luo Nan was more susceptible to dreaming, being dazed, and being absent-minded. Luo Nan later discovered that the external neuron possessed the hollow depository function. He sent his soul atop of it, and it was like entering an empty world. There was no background psychic noise interference there. Then the Wraith sign went hunting, and that created a mess of things. Luo Nan relied completely on the external neuron to act as a buffer against the pressure from the rise of his soul's strength and to ensure his life. Since then, Luo Nan continued sending his soul to the external neuron to relieve the pressure to his fleshly body. He gradually became used to the action. So, to be exact, a long time had passed with Luo Nan's fleshly body and spiritual soul not completely fused. Most of his soul was entrusted upon the external neuron, and though this mysterious object was hidden in his brain, it was not his flesh, blood, or organ. They were a layer apart from one another. Zhu Shenyu said that his fleshly body was being rejected by the external technique formatting theory. The reality of the situation was that there existed a separation and clash between his soul's side, which was using the external neuron as a medium, and his fleshly body, which was a natural existence. This was where the crux of the problem lay, at least in an understandable way. And this was where Luo Nan found himself in a tight bind. Luo Nan could control the external neuron and cause it to move to various parts of his brain. He could even chase it out if he wanted. But his weak fleshly body was far from being able to sustain his soul body with its heavy pressure, and his soul was inseparable from the hollow depository function. Plus, eventually he needed to transfer his soul's strength out of the My Hearts, a prison format, for further refinement. This naturally caused a connection to form with the eye's orifice. The eye's orifice became lively and smooth every time he finished a session of tempering this meridian. His body and soul were linked during this time, and what occurred mimicked the mutual attraction between positive and negative charges within rain clouds. The lightning of the external neuron bombarded the heart lantern. This circumstance was inevitable. So every time Luo Nan finished cultivating, he faced a dangerous trial of walking into the flames of madness. He had failed the first 7 times, but he endured the following dozen. He even reaped some gains. It seemed that his cultivation path was feasible. However, what cultivation required was meticulousness, concentration, and consistency. The worst he had to fear were fluctuations and turmoil. Even if Luo Nan were to reap gains 10 more times over, he would still be completely devastated by a single failure. The problem is quite life-threatening. What's more life-threatening is the fact that no one is capable of helping. Luo Nan didn't open his eyes. He just used his fingertips to streak across the paper edges of the notebook. He flipped the pages of the notebook back and forth. It acted as a core, but it was a secret that could be easily stripped from him. The existence of the external neuron was something he couldn't tell a soul about. This made it so that Luo Nan could only rely on himself, and he pondered over plans bit by bit. 6 days had passed since the heart lantern was first lit. He had faced and retaliated against the lightning attacks 60 times. Luo Nan couldn't think of anything else at first. Beside making every effort to strengthen the structure of the eye's orifice, it might be better to slow down his progress to allow his heart lantern's foundation to stabilize. He even referred to Fairchild's shield of truth configuration. Based on his half-formed eye's orifice and the mechanism behind the fusion of body and soul, Luo Nan spent a great deal of mental effort in fine-tuning the microstructure of his eyes. This had no benefits besides increasing their sturdiness. This was a stupid way of doing things, but the results were not that bad, especially the experiences he repeatedly had a dozen times near the end. It was like the steel manufacturing technique of ancient times, where metal goes through repeated forgings and hammerings. It made the structure of Luo Nan's eye's orifice stronger and tougher, and the lit heart lantern exuded a sense of smoothness, pureness, and thickness. It was only in this way that the heart lantern was able to withstand 53 attacks of lightning and come out undefeated. But deep worries still remained in Luo Nan's heart. Luo Nan's worries grew graver and graver the more he pondered deeper and deeper into the phenomenon of lightning striking his heart lantern. Nanster, a penny for your thoughts. Xi Jinping had deliberately raised his voice, and Luo Nan finally heard him. Luo Nan looked forward with half-lidded eyes and a bit of surprise. What's up? Zhu Lei reproached Xi Jinping at the same time. Don't disturb him, he might be training. Xi Jinping laughed. It's quite shaky in the car. How can anyone train? Aren't you scared of walking into the flames of madness? Luo Nan was speechless, having been stabbed in the face with the proverbial knife. Xi Jinping stopped looking at the road, turning his head over to laugh. When other people train, they get more lively the more they train. Like Lister. But look at you. You've had your eyes and brows hanging down these past few days. It doesn't seem like you're awake. With this sort of training method, not a single pretty girl will put up with you, man. Luo Nan leaned back in his seat. He tried to relax his body, but his eyes still squinted. Yesterday you said we're just meeting up with some of your friends to better handle the matter with gear. Of course, that's what I said. Xi Jinping donned a face of innocence. But didn't I tell you? In the Mystic Arts Research Society, Vice President Tang Yi is most likely going to be top dog there now that Sissy Du resigned and ran away. Tang Yi is also known as the Blood Peony. She got her nickname from the power of her looks. If you're not a handsome dude who's at least an 8 out of 10, you're not allowed to come near her. Even then, most who come near get trampled to the ground. Right now, you're relying on your young face. There's barely enough delicateness and cuteness mixed inside, but it's there. If you don't liven up, the road ahead will be treacherous. Luo Nan let out a long sigh and simply closed his eyes completely. He didn't want to talk, but then the burning heart lantern in his brain lost the smoothness in its luminous flame. Clearly, the strengthening from the last lightning strike, which was the 60th, had stuffed the heart lantern too full. Pressure was inevitably formed toward the incomplete structure of the eye's orifice. Resolving this situation took priority. Luo Nan was accustomed to this as well. He didn't open his eyes, but his fingertips moved to flip the pages of the notebook. He flipped near the end and found a smooth piece of paper wedged between the pages. The paper was flimsy and a bit rough, but it had considerable value. This was a paper talisman that Mr. Gao personally made for Luo Nan, and it was quite an extravagance to be used for practicing. Luo Nan rubbed the paper against his hand as he recalled the techniques taught to him by paper cut. Luo Nan's fingertips moved as he made a simple fold on the paper talisman and grasped it in his palm. His eyes saw nothing. There was only the concentration of his heart lantern. The flame light suddenly flared, then darkened within the shrine that was his brain. In this instant, it was as if an incorporeal flame burned the hand that grasped the paper talisman. The sensation of a hot pain stabbed into Luo Nan, causing him to spread his fingers open by instinct, and seemingly some ashes came flowing out between his fingers. After that came a feeling of impact that was very real. Luo Nan's 5 fingers came together again, and only then did Luo Nan open his eyes to look. There was no paper talisman this time. All Luo Nan saw was a complete 4-limbed entity, a paper man with blurry features. It was the size of his palm, and it had bumped into his thumb to lie paralyzed within his hand. The open electric cart allowed a cool breeze to come in, causing the paper man to shake its hands and feet. It had no reactions other than this. Chapter 148, New Financial Backer, Part 1-2. Translator, Strivon. My luck's decent. Luo Nan looked over the paper man a few times. Then he flipped to the back of his notebook and wedged the paper man between a couple of blank pages. Luo Nan had flipped past 3 similar cases in his notebook. With the addition of this one, there was now a total of 4 paper men hidden within the notebook. Some were a bit bigger, some were a bit smaller, but they were all of the same material. These paper men were made when Luo Nan's eye orifice overflowed. Luo Nan diverted the pressure to them to prevent an overload. Lightning had bombarded the heart lantern 60 times, subtracting the first 7 times when the lantern was extinguished. And considering the damage, Luo Nan had to divert the pressure a total of 25 times to restore basic equilibrium. However, only 4 paper men were completed successfully, leaving a success rate of only 16%. It was pitifully low. Although the result was this bad, Luo Nan still had to record it. Luo Nan opened his flexible e-ink screen and recorded the data. Basically, the paper men were Luo Nan's homework for the week. He was going to turn them in to Papercut later to look over. He felt that these paper men were rather different than the articles he created in the beginning. At the very least, the way he cut them out was quite cool. Luo Nan put away his pen and blew away what ash remained sticking to his fingers. He blinked his eyes and felt that his eye sockets were a bit dry. He closed his eyes again to observe himself internally and saw that the luminescence of the heart lantern was rather weak. It was weaker than before it had received the strengthening from the external neuron. Luo Nan wasn't surprised by this. He was still a novice when it came to activating his soul's strength. He was far from being precise when applying it, and this time he had obviously pushed himself too hard and used too much of it. Luo Nan didn't rush to recover what he had lost, for doing so would require him to transport his soul's strength from the My Heart's a prison format. One mistake and the external neuron would come roaring. It truly wasn't worth it. He allowed the vital energy of his body to naturally replenish and nourish. Although this took a long time, the process was stable and could be said to be flexible. Sitting in front, Zai Junping was in full spirits since mentioning the blood peony, the matter with gear. Tang Yi is such a powerful woman. Either we need an even more powerful person to subdue her, or we need to make sure that our meeting goes well. Nanster, this is a good thing. We know she's a beauty based on her nickname. Today's the 25th. The price competition for gear is the Monday after, the 30th. Time is of the essence, and the mission is a tough one. We can't tarry any longer. Luo Nan kicked the seat in front of him to give Zai Junping a warning. Then he switched to a normal topic. Is there any information on the starting bids for the two sides? Right now we don't have anything definite, only rumors. Zai Junping shrugged. Sissy Du sure has it tough. By breaking the door as he storms from his figurative home, he's burned quite a few bridges in the small network he has in the Mystic Arts Research Society. He just mentioned a little something about the financial backer behind the Mystic Arts Research Society, implying that the financial backer wants to work with the Construction Society. Working with them, that can't be. Luo Nan was rather surprised. Wasn't the Order of Justice the ones behind the Mystic Arts Research Society? The Rainbow Fund was behind the Construction Society, which was the same as Quantum Corporation. What did it mean for these two organizations to work together? Don't things change quickly in capitalism? In any case, I heard the main thing is that there is a different main financial backer for the Mystic Arts Research Society in this bidding war. Before, it was a religious organization. Now it's a research fund. It's quite famous. I mean, it's famous in our circle. The LCRF, the Life Cycle Research Fund. Oh, you've heard of them before? Zai Junping was quite surprised. He turned to look at Luo Nan. I thought you don't pay attention to such things. I heard of them recently, 2 days ago. Most of Luo Nan's energy was focused on the heart lantern of the eye's orifice these past 10 days. However, Luo Nan still continued with the training courses that the society had arranged for him. A few of the courses were put on the back burner due to his interference ability issue, except for the practical courses from Crag Burst and Red Fox. He was mostly involved in the Soul Strength Activation Techniques course, and he persisted in learning its theories. Once in a while, he would perform experiments and make adjustments. If he didn't do all of this, the small paper men in his notebook would have never existed. Luo Nan reacted with lightning speed when Zai Junping talked about the Life Cycle Research Fund. This was because he Yuan's ins and outs of the Psychic Wave Network's world order and Bamboo Pole's notes on the major characters of the world both mentioned this institution. On the surface, this organization was established by several of the top rich. The main investment direction was the classic direction for extending human life expectancy. This was the most important investment fund in the field of biology, and they were major investors of several important biological laboratories. But there should be inseparably close relationships between the fund, the government, and the military. It was practically an open secret. The fund also should be working with the various powers of the inner world. Many important projects were there, and that included the Frost River waterway Luo Nan was ever so familiar with. It was quite strange. Luo Nan leaned back against his seat and stared blankly at the sky. The Life Fund, Quantum Corporation, and the Order from before, they're all interested in gear. Why? He spoke aloud to himself and wasn't expecting an answer, so he never thought Xi Jinping would catch up to his train of thought in an instant. Sissy Du said that the structure of gear is very suitable for performing mystical rituals. The Order Club that used to own gear is also known as the Ritual Club. The fraternities and sororities of Acumen College often come here to hold ceremonies and rituals. They even do drugs, party, and the like. It's said that the effects there are stronger than doing these things on the outside. Xi Jinping just spoke without thinking, but when he turned around to look at Luo Nan, he saw that Luo Nan was frowning. Xi Jinping instantly shut up, but he couldn't hold it in for too long. Even I feel a certain something while I'm there. I feel especially comfortable over there. I think faster, and I become keener and more alert. Plus, sometimes I don't need to open my eyes, and I can see stuff. I can see things completely. Nanster, what do you think? Am I unlocking some supernatural powers? Luo Nan was dumbfounded and speechless. He didn't know what to say. Xi Jinping became spirited. I didn't feel it before, but I've been dealing with Sissy Du for the past few days. He's really an interesting fellow. He has a lot of stuff hidden inside him, and the information I got from him was quite random but interesting. Right, are you two free on Sunday? Sissy Du says that there's some starry sky meet. They regularly hold them every Sunday at the Mystic Arts Saloon. Several people with powers attend them. It's very interesting. Shall we go check it out? I don't understand a thing about the mystic arts, Zhu Lei responded awkwardly. His worldview had broadened as he gained deeper and deeper understandings of the inner world. He was considering joining the Wilderness Explorers Society. How could he go to a place called the Mystic Arts Saloon? It sounded super sketchy. Nansto. I've already made plans for Sunday. I need to send something off to be repaired. Luo Nan declined Xi Jinping's invitation as well. It was the truth. He really needed to go to the service center. Xi Jinping was a bit disappointed. Then forget it. I just wanted you all to get some new perspectives on things, he sighed. Oh well. Zhu Lei turned to look at Luo Nan. The meaning in his eyes was likely, does this brother know anything? Luo Nan gave a slight shake of his head. Xi Jinping knew that Luo Nan possessed some supernatural powers, and rather revered him for it. Xi Jinping was also a bit curious, and he constantly prodded Luo Nan with caution, but Luo Nan never took the initiative to talk about himself. After all, there were differences in their circles, and it was hard to explain some things without Xi Jinping personally experiencing them. It would just make a mess of his emotions. But on the other hand, Xi Jinping was in his format pyramid. Xi Jinping was one of Luo Nan's believers. Even though Xi Jinping was on the lowest apprentice level, the strict rules of the format pyramid weren't likely influencing him. Luo Nan thought of his own sufferings and felt that he should carefully examine this situation when he gets the chance. To make sure, His friend wasn't suffering from any negative impacts. It wasn't a good time right then to theorize about such matters. Luo Nan's thoughts took a turn and he thought of something else. He faced Zhu Lei and asked, "Did you bring it over?" The topic was changed far too quickly. Zhu Lei was unable to react for a time. What? The mechanical device inside the Tai Kai ball. It needs to be fixed. Luo Nan was a bit fed up. I told you 2 days ago. Bamboo Pole introduced me to an amazing repairer. Oh, I brought it. Zhu Lei tapped his skull and reached a hand in his pocket. He rummaged around and grasped nothing. This blockhead could only awkwardly laugh. I stuffed it in my locker this morning and forgot to take it out. I can get it now if you want. Forget it. It's okay to give it to me tomorrow. Though Zai Junping didn't know what those two were talking about, he still glanced all around and said, "Aren't the locker rooms in the South 2 area? We're in the South 1 area. It's not far. We might as well stop by. It's better to exchange it now, just in case you forget tomorrow. Your memory hasn't been good these days." "That's fine." Luo Nan and Zhu Lei concurred, but Luo Nan paused. "Zai Junping mentioned something strange just now. What did you say about my memory?" Zai Junping turned the cart as he shouted, "I said it long ago. The disciples of Gym Master Xiu are skilled and amazing. Bring me there so I can pay respects to him and learn some skills." You two forgot all about it. Luo Nan and Zhu Lei glanced at each other, having been reproached. They were both a bit embarrassed. It wasn't that they forgot. The truth was, Zhu Lei had mentioned it to Zhu Shenyu, but Zhu Shenyu refused. There was no leeway for discussion. Zhu Shenyu's straightforward attitude made Luo Nan feel pride to have been accepted under his tutelage. Yep, he really did feel that way. Why did Gym Master Xiu agree so easily to teach Luo Nan? The two ability uses stammered responses as the electric cart parked outside the locker rooms. Zhu Lei hurriedly got off the cart to get the object. Luo Nan and Zai Junping chatted, speaking 1 minute and being quiet the next. They were unable to go away from the topic of gear. Halfway through their conversation, Luo Nan subconsciously opened his flexible e-ink screen. He used his status as a member of the society to retrieve the architectural drawings and other data from the internet. He looked at the creative design of the large and small gears biting into each other. The building possessed a powerful and rigorous unique beauty. Luo Nan really cared about this building. Luo Nan could understand if it was just the Rainbow Fund. After all, Yan Yongbo was their leader. That guy certainly wanted to seize back the laboratory to wash the accusations from his old man whose fame was built on theft. However, whether it was the Life Cycle Research Fund or the Order of Justice, they all displayed some interest toward gear. Was it because of the effectiveness of mystic rituals over there? Luo Nan traced up the logical chain. What was his mother's objective when she designed and built gear? Was it, as the data said, that gear was her graduation work of pure art? Was it really that simple? Luo Nan looked at the image of a free-spirited girl in the data records and went into a daze. He was spellbound. This lasted until Zai Junping made a coy snap of his fingers. He raised his voice and said, "Hey, beautiful, this must be a fated encounter. Would you like a ride?" Luo Nan raised his head and saw someone walk out from the locker rooms. It wasn't Zhu Lei, but a woman with beauty far above the average, just as Zai Junping said. She looked familiar. Chapter 148, New Financial Backer, Part 2-2. Translator, Strivon. Having heard Zai Junping's plebe voice, The girl who just walked out raised her head. Her gaze was rather calm. She even revealed a subtle smile. Head Zai, hello. Her simple greeting destroyed Zai Junping's attempt to hit on her. By now, Luo Nan had ascertained the identity of this person. Senior Sister Tian. The girl turned to look at them, and only then did astonishment show on her face. Junior Nan, is your health getting better? This calm and collected girl was none other than Tian Si. Half a month ago, a social activity occurred with her and third brother Mo Qiu of the Mo family getting together. This was also the reason why Luo Nan and the others had gone to Frost River Reality and experienced that enormous incident. Luo Nan didn't blame her or his cousin. He was just a bit lamentful. Mo Qiu and Tian Si seemed like they're getting along quite well, but he didn't hear much news about them after the incident. It was a few days after Luo Nan was admitted to the hospital that Tian Si dragged her unwilling younger cousin to visit him specifically. Her etiquette wasn't lacking, and Luo Nan had a good impression of her. This was quite unfortunate from the perspective of the Mo family members. Today, Tian Si wore a slim-fit turtleneck sweater and paired it with a velvet mini skirt. Her clothes complemented her small face well, and they made her petite figure appear long and slender. This made her seem all the more gentle, refined, and beautiful. No wonder Zai Junping was hitting on her. In any case, the two both had office positions in the student organizations. They were familiar with forming relationships, and they far exceeded Luo Nan in this field. You're the head of a department, I'm the head of a department. What a coincidence. Zai Junping still had an expression that was beaming with smiles as he jumped off the cart. He extended his hand and acted like a chauffeur. I've always hoped to drive a cart and spur the horse for head Tian. Today the heavens have given me this chance. Don't decline, I know where you're going. Cloud City Water Village, right. Head Tian is attending the party as well. Fate has brought us together. Don't you think so, Nanster? Nanster had also gotten off the cart. He gave him a glare. Zai Junping was still a bit scared of him. He instinctively flinched back. Tian Si responded with a faint giggle. I'm just there to pad out the numbers. There's no need to look at me so highly, young Master Zai. Right, Junior Nan. I heard Tian Kai say that quite a few people have mentioned you within the Mystic Arts Research Society. Your name is becoming more and more famous. She maintained a smile from beginning to end, as if she was talking about trivial matters, but there were some subtle meanings hidden within her words. Luo Nan and Zai Junping were both startled, but in that moment, Zhu Lei just so happened to rush out from the locker rooms. Zhu Lei saw the three talking and slowed his pace. Tian Si and Zhu Lei didn't meet each other that night at Frost River Reality, but she was able to infer that the three boys had come as a group. She immediately took a step back. Young Master Zai, Junior Nan, you all go first. I already have plans to go with some other people. That can't be right. Zai Junping was completely in a picking-up mode. He completely forgot Luo Nan's wordless warning. He acted completely surprised, like a thunderbolt had come out of the blue. Plans with a lady friend. Tian Si thought for a bit and pursed her lips to a smile. Yep, a lady friend. Zai Junping was unable to find a good response, and it was inappropriate of him to nag further. He could only sigh and lament in a farewell, and he drove the electric cart off into the distance. As he turned the corner, he glanced backward and chuckled mischievously. She's quite hard to deal with. Luo Nan grunted in agreement. A mature and strong soul lived within Tian Si's petite body. Zai Junping's foresight was not wrong. But this dude couldn't keep his composure. He instantly sighed and said, "I've been at the school for so many years, and Chen Weiken has never been able to gain her hand. I wonder who will be able to this time at the party." Luo Nan gave the seat in front of him a light kick. "Concentrate on driving." Zhu Lei snorted, "Chen Weiken." His relationship with Chen Xiaolin was ruined. Because of his attitude towards Chen Weiken back at the Limestone Water Village pub. It was natural for Zhu Lei to have a completely bad impression of this vice president of the student council. Zhu Lei was particularly affected when their cart sped past Limestone Water Village pub. He looked up at the building only to be haunted by memories. His mood turned much worse. Luckily, this wasn't the address of the party. Cloud City Water Village possessed many locations. There were several similar buildings where large congregations could be held. The Pingjiang district was full of buildings that were generally low. The building complex that was Cloud City Water Village was the most prominent among them. It was also the most eye-catching one. The main building complex was still around 50 kilometers away from Acumen College, but its derivative building areas were already built along campus borders. Business was flourishing, and it attracted countless students and teachers of the school. This was a place of amusement and consumption, a place to enjoy oneself. This was why this place was known as the large activity area of Acumen College. In fact, Cloud City Water Village used similar methods to be situated next to the colleges and universities for their two main locations. Their buildings were in tremendous locations because they were near the top businesses, universities, and private high schools of Xia City. The members of this party all came from the 5 schools covered by Cloud City Water Village. A total of 500 people convened together. This was quite the scale, and the party was a formal one. Before going to the venue, Luo Nan and the others had to dress in accordance to the party's requirements. Aren't there enough annoyances? There's also this damned thing as well. Luo Nan was shaking as he wore the white gown that was clearly a size too large. He was in a luxurious suite that Rich Zai had booked. His expression was one of bafflement. Working clothes man. Those who want to dress as doctors dress as doctors. Those who want to dress as mad scientists dress up as mad scientists. Oh, I even prepared sterile gloves. Do you want to put them on? Zai Junping dangled the gloves before Luo Nan's eyes. He was grinning from ear to ear. Luo Nan swatted his hand away in frustration and asked, "What kind of party is this? So gaudy." "Hey, I sent you the invitation email. You didn't look." Luo Nan was left speechless. He had fully focused on cultivating the eye's orifice for the past few days, and the free time he did have was crammed with the trainings from the society. He didn't have the mental energy to attend to other matters. The party was entirely arranged by Zai Junping. The email invitation in his inbox was still unread. Zai Junping laughed and said, "Then better start cramming before the battle. The invitation was written very clearly. If you don't read it and end up embarrassing yourself, don't blame me." Luo Nan rolled his eyes, but he opened the invitation letter using his wristband. Indeed, the letter was written very clearly. The party was a role-playing party. Every participant had to dress up as a social occupation. It was preferable for the participant to dress up as an occupation related to their field of study, their specialties, and so on. There were thousands of occupations in society, but people had to dress up in occupations with distinguishing characteristics. This narrowed the options down quite a bit, and there were bound to be repeats. The theme of today's party was kinship. The invitation letter explained that those who played roles of the same profession would interact with each other. The wording on the interaction was mysterious. It wasn't quite explicit. Luo Nan scratched his head while reading the letter. He had been a homebody for many years. He feared this sort of excitement the most, so he felt uncomfortable about the whole thing. Plus, what sort of bad taste does Zai Junping have, having him dress as a doctor-mad scientist? Zhu Lei relaxed at this time. He bellowed with laughter. Luckily, I looked at the letter a long time ago. I don't need to make any special preparations. He was playing the role of a martial artist. This was truly a display of his inherent character. He was wearing the clothes of the divine Yu Jim that he wore every day anyway. There was practically no change. It could be said that he was advertising for the Jiaogyuan. Habits were formed through long years and many days. Even if the Jiaogyuan wasn't recruiting new students, he didn't choose to wear a different set of clothes. He worried the least about the role-playing theme out of all of them. As for Zai Junping, he was the most normal. He wore an overly outlandish formal suit. His clothes were sewn with a layer of sequins, making him rather eye-catching. Luo Nan was both surprised and unconvinced. Why can you wear a suit? This is also a role too. What do you think? We're dressed true to our basic characters. I am the romantic young master living a life of pleasure. Zai Junping was all laughs and giggles as he pushed Luo Nan and Zhu Lei out the suite. Together, they left for the venue. Luo Nan was shaking the white gown, feeling awkward no matter what he did. Then a certain someone took out a pair of gloves and dangled them before his eyes. "Physician Luo, you really don't need this. Call me Dr. Luo." Luo Nan snapped back, but he seized the gloves at lightning speed and stuffed them in his pockets. He couldn't hold back from laughing. It had been quite a while since he was in such a relaxed mood. They were currently in the Ocean Sky Cloud City building. This was the fourth building among the 6 ring distributed secondary buildings. The first 3 buildings contained Water Village in their names. Starting from Ocean Sky Cloud City, the rest of the buildings contain the words Cloud City in their name. The heights of these buildings went up in ascending order, and so did the prices of their services. They walked the path that led to the party's venue. Zhu Lei winced at the luxurious and refined displays along the road. The instant they entered the main venue, a crisp, cold, and gorgeous deep blue light was blasted into their faces. Zhu Lei exclaimed, "My God, is this the Crystal Palace?" The first impression people got from the main venue was a field of rippling water. A huge amount of ocean water was sealed by translucent crystal walls. Under the illumination of light, the realism of the ocean was unveiled in an ideal and near-perfect manner. Actually, if only this sight was considered, any modern ocean parks would showcase something similar. The world of the ocean's floor could even be seen. This wasn't that rare, but all one needed was to think, and he would realize that this scene was located in an 800-meter-tall skyscraper. There was ocean water from top to bottom. The entire thing was linked and was stored between walls. The ocean water flowed within the pillar. Tons and tons of ocean water was displayed in this willful and structured way. Of course, there swimmed also millions of marine life, from the tiny scallops to the enormous blue whales, all living inside. Altogether, they formed a complete yet twisted food chain. The participants of the party mingled around the main ocean display. They were atop the circular viewing platform. Several hundred people was a sizable number. but they were negligible when compared to the enormous crystal pillar that was 120 meters in diameter and as high as the building itself. To be able to erect this water tank in this broken world, and to inject it full of water and maintain the highest level of safety and protection, it could only be said that the success of this project was a top contender for being one of the greatest achievements in applied physics. The Cloud City Water Village building complex was only completed in its entirety 4 years ago. Ocean Sky Cloud City was the last building to be made, taking longer than the main building by about a year. One could see just how difficult it was to construct. Luo Nan had come here twice before with his aunt's family. This wasn't the first time he saw this scene, so the emotions that were stirred within him were a bit weak. However, he could never tire of the beautiful scene of the ocean life inside. The three of them didn't utter a word for a while. The silence lasted until someone called out to them. "Brother Ping, you didn't come early." Hu Huijing, who was in charge of advanced arrangements, got here way earlier. He seemed to come out of nowhere. Today's party was a show of friendship jointly arranged by the student councils of 5 different schools. The schools were only slotted for 100 guests each. It was a relatively high-end party. Zai Junping was a member of the student council. He was naturally qualified to attend. On the other hand, it was quite hard to get slots for Luo Nan and Zhu Lei. In the end, Hu Huijing yielded his invitation for a +1. 4 dudes came together to a party where the mainstream trend showed that men came paired with women. It was unavoidable for them to be a bit conspicuous. Chapter 149, Strangeness in the Ocean, Part 1-2. Translator, Strivon. Compared to Zai Junping, who completely did not expend effort into role-playing with sincerity, Hu Huijing at least put on a performance. He wore Western cowboy clothes and a cowboy hat that sat tilted on his head. Under careful examination, the hat was made out of paper. It was both funny and casual. Hu Huijing saw how everyone focused their gazes atop his head, and he shook his head rather proudly. Quite decent, right? Luo Nan's hate had yet to fade away. He sneered. It's way better than some money boy. There were only so many people who were dressed up. One look, and anyone could tell who was the money boy. Zai Junping gaped with his mouth, but no words came out. He could only spread his hands in helplessness. Hu Huijing held back from laughing as he slightly tipped the brim of his hat and bowed in thanks. The ascertained Mr. Moneyboy spoke unhappily. "Let's not talk about trivial matters. Have you confirmed it, Hu Huijing?" Hu Huijing responded, "The blood peony will attend for sure." "What occupation is she dressing up as?" "Who knows? Just look at her height and we can find her. A tall, beautiful girl of 185 centimeters. She stands out like a crane in a flock of chicken." As the 2 officers of the student council discussed the details, Zhu Lei turned to ask someone more trustworthy. "Nanster." Luo Nan shook his head slightly. He faced the crystal pillar in the center and became a bit spellbound. When it came to finding people, Luo Nan was an expert among experts. He had scanned 3 floors above and below with a slight release of his mental senses. However, he didn't find anybody who fit Hu Huijing's description. Instead, he felt a clear sense of stagnation when his soul's strength cut through the crystal pillar. He tried 7 different frequencies before he was able to find a precise way to send his psychic waves into the sealed-up ocean water. He found nothing strange besides the fact he had to change frequencies. Luo Nan first cursed at himself for being stupid. It was impossible for the blood peony to hide in the ocean water in any event. Why did he do something so meaningless? But his thoughts continued to churn, and he suddenly realized something. This crystal wall could isolate a good portion of psychic wave transmission. The material. No traces of mutual interference between mental and material planes existed upon it. It was like the crystal wall had been blessed. Blessed. Luo Nan looked up. He was unable to see all the way to the top edge of the crystal pillar. Then he looked down. He was unable to see the bottom. A blessing was performed on this much volume. His chain of logic was shattered just like this. Zai Junping grumbled to himself to the side. She's probably not even here yet. Let's wait some more. We can't be too obvious about it. We have to make it seem natural. She's a hard person to deal with. Hu Huiying said, "It truly is strange. Tang Yi is graduating next year, but it seems like he isn't pursuing further studies. Something about meeting the position of president. No one can tell what he's thinking. A great number of people is certainly needed to be able to guess what he's thinking." Zai Junping tidied up his sequined suit and sighed. "If we can't find her, then we can't find her. It may not be reasonable to deal with her directly. We should accomplish our objective in a roundabout manner. Let's first get to know the host and use him as a middleman." Zhu Lei was still confused. Who's the host? Isn't this a joint activity among 5 schools? Someone always provides the venue. The Yao family is a major shareholder of Ocean Sky Cloud City. Their 4th young master, Yao Feng, attends Cloud City School of Business. The reservation for the 3 stories was done by his hand. After explaining this much, Zai Junping grinned and said, "The Yao family were in the shipping industry back then. They did maritime transportation. They've done some dark business, but Yao Feng has a decent character. What's even more impressive is the fact that his family seems to be old friends with Tang Yi's family. They both have stakes in the same equity," corrected Hu Huiying. "Humph, there are even rumors of his grandfather having a mistress. In any case, there's some friendship between them." Zai Junping's voice quieted to a whisper. He was about to say something a bit taboo, and his gaze even shifted to a corner. "In my opinion, the key to today's mission lies upon Lista's body." Zhu Lei blinked, and he extended a finger to his own nose. "Me." "Yes, you." Zai Junping reached out with a hand to clamp on Zhu Lei's thick shoulder. He briefed Zhu Lei directly. "Yao Feng is a fanatical fight enthusiast. Of course, he has high standards, but has little ability. The results will certainly be great if you chat with him in this field." Hu Huiying added, "And several people say that Tang Yi is an expert fighter." Zai Junping finished it up. "So today we will begin with martial arts. Lista, it's all up to you. Is it fine like this? Don't we need to plan some more?" Zhu Lei far exceeded Luo Nan in being cheerful, but there was not much difference between these 2 brothers when it came to handling people. Zhu Lei thought of the burden he now had and felt a trace of apprehension. Zai Junping never expected this tall and strong brother to want to turn tail and run. He felt annoyed for not having his expectations met. "The heck are you getting nervous for? This is a social party. Things are very simple when it comes to students. This party is just an excuse to loosen up and have fun. The venue, alcohol, beautiful girls, handsome dudes, and a few unspeakable things. Are you scared that Tang Yi will fall for you? Who cares? Did you train to be a kid or a man? You're the one who's the kid." Zhu Lei raised his voice, but then his voice died down. "Do you play around this crazily all the time? Every party has its own benefits. The more you take part in this sort of activities, the more you know where you are on the social ladder. You know who you can work with in the future. You know who you can use, you know who you can betray, and you know who you need to stay far, far away from. Zai Junping played around, speaking in a whisper. He saw Zhu Lei's expression and spat out some saliva in laughter. You really believed me, man. We're just students. Students. I'm just playing around. If we don't get along, then we'll get down to it. If we do get along well, then we'll get down even harder. Just make some friends, and everything is good. In any case, we're just speculating right now. You might not even need to see Tang Yi. We're just giving her face. Okay, let's go. Zai Junping dragged Zhu Lei, and their group went around the viewing platform. They made a few turns and arrived at an open-style bar in the corner. There was a circular sofa here, but there were no lights. There was only the deep blue illumination spilling out from the world's first water tank pillar. 7 people sat on the sofa, 4 males and 3 females. Found the host, whispered Zai Junping. He then walked forward with large strides until he reached the outside of the circular sofa. He smacked his palm on the back of the sofa, scaring the person closest to him. The person turned their head to look and responded with a playful curse. Thus began a conversation. Since the lighting was dim and Luo Nan was refraining from cultivating in the eye's orifice, Luo Nan naturally used his mental senses to better distinguish the scene. Soon he sensed that the 3 males out of the 7 people, not including Yao Feng who was chatting with Zai Junping, were quite conspicuous. 2 of them were younger out of the 3, they were in their 20s. Then there was one who was a bit older, around his 30s. Their ages were beyond the scope of this party. Zai Junping began introducing his friends. Yep, we're best buds and we came here together for some fun. Zhu Lei is a young martial artist. He's first-rate. You know the event at Frost River Reality, right? Lister was one of the last few people to be evacuated from Fudong Main Street. Luo Nan was also one of the last few people to be evacuated. He is an extremely outstanding psychological expert. He also saved my life. Luo Nan's mood became complex as he heard this. It was rare for Zai Junping to use such wordings to brag about him and Zhu Lei, but what the heck did he mean by him being a psychological expert? Yao Feng also pondered things in his mind. Zai Junping used to always have a sexy companion by his side. What was with the sudden change in character? Zai Junping still possessed the same enthusiastic attitude though. He took the initiative to stick wristbands together and exchange contact information. Then Yao Feng turned around to prepare introducing the people on his side. Suddenly someone spoke up, Frost River Reality, why that's interesting. My sister's been stingy about that mess. No one's told me anything clear about it. Why don't you guys tell me what happened? The person who spoke was one of the 3 males that Luo Nan had paid attention to. He sat the farthest inside, and he wore a military uniform. It was true that a soldier was an occupation, but it was hard to avoid suspicion for illegal doings for an ordinary person who was wearing it. The person was sprawled lazily. His arms hung down from the back of the sofa, and he took up a great deal of space. He had a sloppy appearance. Zai Junping was displeased when he heard his tone of voice. It was his moment to display his attitude to everyone else. When did it become this guy's turn to be in the spotlight? Zai Junping felt the arrogance in the man's words, and his heart burned with fury. But then Hu Huying gave him a light jab in the ribs as a reminder. Yao Feng did something as well. He used the dim lighting of the bar to give him a subtle but fierce glare. Zai Junping didn't drink alcohol nor take drugs. His brain was still very sober. Some thoughts flashed in his mind, and he swallowed the words back down his throat. Yao Feng seized this moment of silence. Come, 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 let's first get to know each other. I'll introduce you guys. He Donglu. The military man raised his hand as if he were answering a roll call. He sounded quite cheerful. Complete outsiders have come to butt in. Xi Jinping's mind spun in a circle. He really didn't expect the military man to act like someone from a Xiangxia novel. However, this person didn't appear to be very deep. The approximate nature of the man's temperament could be easily guessed. Silk pants, big silk pants. Probably because like repels like. Xi Jinping found this guy unpleasing to the eye no matter how he looked at him. Hu Huijing gathered over and reminded him, space he. It was just 2 syllables, but the meaning behind them was terrifying. Xi Jinping shouted inwardly, "Oh crap," to himself. This was the first time he admitted defeat. He was also scared of Luo Nan's and Xi Jinping's reactions, so he quickly used his skills as an actor. He laughed as he said, "Outsiders? There are no outsiders here. We know each other from here on out. My last name is Xi. I'm Xi Jinping, a bored person of leisure." His hand streaked over Luo Nan and Zhu Lei, and stopped while pointing at Hu Huijing. "I've already introduced these two, but I still have one more best bud. Hu Huijing III. He's the owner of a great deal of farmland. I feel that the amount of land his family owns will one day extend into the wilderness." Xi Jinping wanted to blur the focus away from Frost River reality. Yao Feng was very cooperative in this. He beamed. "The third's family raises cows, my family raises fish. Our family has always had friendly relations with each other." Hu Huijing raised his paper hat in greeting. In the innermost area of the circular sofa, He Donglu laughed merrily. "It really is quite the coincidence. We can be paired up. We also have a martial artist here and a chauffeur. Huh, do doctors and pilots fit together?" The jump in this brother's train of thought was too sudden. The group of people were a bit speechless. Yao Feng composed himself first. He rushed to steer the conversation back on track. "Let me introduce Feng Jiajun, or Instructor Feng. He is a high-level instructor in the Thunder Falcon martial arts gym. He should be in the same social circle as Zhu Lei. We have so many close people. They might even join forces after a bit of interaction." Feng Jiajun was just over 20. He was older than Zhu Lei by around 5 years, but he was still young. When compared to Zhu Lei, he was slightly thinner and a bit more handsome. He came from the sort that was very popular with girls. "Zhu Lei, you must be new in the circle. Well, now we know each other." There was a bit of haughtiness contained in Feng Jiajun's words, but he still followed the customs within his social circle. He stood up and was about to cup his hands in a bow, but then his gaze somewhat changed directions to land upon Zhu Lei's chest. The symbol of Zhu Lei's Daoguan was located there. The design of a 3-legged cauldron. Chapter 149, Strangeness in the Ocean, Part 2-2. Translator, Strivon. Feng Jiajun's eyelids drooped down slightly, but the smile on his face grew much more distinct. "Instructor Xiu." Zhu Lei replied humbly, "I'm not an instructor. At most, I'm a teaching assistant for my Daoguan. I haven't finished my apprenticeship yet." "Is that so? Which Daoguan do you hail from?" Zhu Lei wasn't one to let any chance to spread the name of his Daoguan escape his grasp. He immediately cleared his throat and said, "Divine Yu Jim of the River Wu District. Gym Master Xiu's Daoguan." Feng Jiajun's lips split into a grin, revealing a mouth full of white teeth. Then I've truly been looking forward to meeting you for a long time. Zhu Lei was both shocked and delighted. Instructor Feng knows our gym master. I naturally do. Divine you, man, it's very famous. He spoke the word you in a very drawn-out manner. No matter how straightforward Zhu Lei was, even he felt that something was wrong in that moment. He looked at Feng Jiajun, who had just extended a hand with a smile. We should get to know each other. Shaking hands was not a good practice within the martial arts circle. He wanted Zhu Lei's hand. Zhu Lei hesitated for a moment, but he saw Feng Jiajun frown a bit amidst his firm attitude. Zhu Lei extended his hand, and the two shook hands. He listened to Feng Jiajun continue speaking. I've heard of Gym Master Xiu and knew of his name for a long time. After all, he opened that shop in Boshan Building, but I've rarely seen that man in the 10 years he's been there. I've heard that all of you are moving soon. Feng Jiajun wanted to show a relaxed and easygoing attitude. He spoke fluently, like pearls, but he suddenly stopped. Zhu Lei's eyebrows rose, and a creaking sound of friction, which made one's teeth ache from hearing it, could be heard from where their two hands met. Then a light bang sounded out, as if a miniature balloon had popped. At that instant, Feng Jiajun's palm moved as slippery as a snake. His hand slipped away from Zhu Lei's fingers, but his body unconsciously recoiled. He was frozen there for a moment before standing back up straight. He lowered his head to look at his own palm, and his expression darkened. The corner of his lips lifted into a smirk, then he regained his smile. You've trained your strength quite decently. Oh, have two enemies met each other on a narrow road, an inevitable clash between foes. Donglu straightened his sitting posture a bit. He took his arms that had hung from the sofa and smacked his chest. He even rubbed it a few times. His attitude showed that he enjoyed watching chaos and didn't mind a huge commotion happening. You may be right, but was it good to just say it outright? Donglu's skill at being a silk pants forced even Zai Junping to concede defeat. Zai Junping pondered, if I don't drink alcohol or take drugs, I probably won't be a match for him. Yao Feng just felt that a disaster had descended upon him, but the curses that filled his belly were unable to come out of his mouth. He could only rack his head for a way of conciliation. It's normal for martial artists to learn from one another, but if it's done too early, the consequent shows become meaningless. Young Master He has a point. Donglu accepted the criticism by going with the flow. He looked quite easy to talk to, but he possessed a bit of a silver tongue when he opened his mouth. Feng Jiajun frowned a bit, but in the end, he took a step back. Zhu Lei didn't let Feng Jiajun go that easily. He furrowed his brows and glared at Feng Jiajun with blazing eyes, not letting him escape his sight. Feng Jiajun's eyes went cold and dark upon seeing this. On the other hand, Donglu laughed upon seeing his expression. There's no rush. Didn't you hear? There's still a show later on. I'll let you all have some time when that happens. Hey, I've waited so long. Old Yao, where's your family's most precious treasure? Yao Feng lowered his head to look at his wristband. He smiled reluctantly. Almost here. He gave Zai Junping a meaningful look upon saying this, and the latter understood Yao Feng without words. Then he chuckled with an utterly unhappy heart. Young Master go have fun first. We're going to go for a walk. Donglu was an expert in picking on him. Don't forget about the matter with the show. I'll show your sister. Zai Junping cursed in his mind from his belly to the heavens. He was going to talk a bit more with Yao Feng, but in the current circumstances, it seemed that Yao Feng might cry. Yao Feng absolutely wouldn't be in the mood to help them hook up with Tang Yi. Their most important objective for participating in this party had mostly fallen through. Zai Junping and Hu Huijing dragged Luo Nan and Zhu Lei away together. Zhu Lei remained silent since the handshake. His expression was deep and solemn, his fury not fading away. He turned his head back to look after being dragged a few steps by Hu Huiying. Feng Jiajun didn't react. It looked like he was calling someone. Luo Nan saw the whole conversation happen from beginning to end. He was a complete observer. The way the second generation of the rich dealt with each other was not his expertise, regardless of intelligence or clumsiness. He lacked all interest. Only the matter with Feng Jiajun had occurred in such a bizarre manner. It involved Zhu Shenyu and his gym, so it was unavoidable for Luo Nan to be worried. Through a slight effort of will, all of the words that were exchanged between Feng Jiajun and the person on the other side of the line were captured by Luo Nan's mental senses. The information was transmitted back to Luo Nan. Zhu Lei still maintained an unsightly expression. His fury was hard to appease. What the hell is up with the Feng Dude? Did our Jiaoguan provoke him or something? Boshan Building, does it have something to do with Boshan Building? Luo Nan spoke without thinking as he monitored Feng Jiajun's call. It just might be. You're saying Zhu Lei wasn't stupid. He soon confirmed the key elements, traced down the logical train, and put together the string of clues. The meaning behind that Feng guy's words. He envies the fact that our Jiaoguan is in Boshan Building. Thunder Falcon Martial Arts Gym is a huge gym. They wouldn't. Oh, could it be that they were the ones who lost the bet back then? Do they want their venue back? That's probably the case. Luo Nan still remembered what Zhu Lei had mentioned. Back when he had arrived at Xia City, Zhu Shenyu had made a bet with someone and had won the usage rights for the Jiaoguan site for 10 years. Feng Jiajun had mentioned 10 years, moving, and similar words during the handshake as well. The situation was made much clearer when combining this information with the information revealed by the call. Zhu Lei spat, "This guy only shows up when the Jiaoguan is moving. What the hell happened 10 years ago? No, Nanster, I need to make a call. You're going to contact the Gym Master." Yes, the Gym Master never mentioned this matter before, but I see that this man's going to stop by the Jiaoguan. We have to be direct about this. Luo Nan stared at him. Be patient when you ask and tell me what he says later. Zhu Lei nodded. He found a secluded place and proceeded to contact Zhu Shenyu. Since Zhu Shenyu often didn't carry any electronics, it was a bit troublesome to call him. Luo Nan watched Zhu Lei's actions, and he subconsciously shook his head. He might not be able to get the answer out from the Gym Master. I need to take different means. Luo Nan understood Gym Master Xiu to be a genuine taciturn man. Nothing would come out of him if he didn't want to talk, no matter how much Zhu Lei were to coax and pester him. In order to prevent the Gym Master from making a stubborn mistake, Luo Nan thought of several more ways to collect information. His best option in Xia City was undoubtedly the Explorers Society. They had recruited Mr. Giant Arm, a powerful martial artist. The society should have a good understanding of the situation in the martial arts circle. Luo Nan habitually pressed a finger against his earlobe. He logged in to the psychic wave network, but was unable to find anyone. Then an alarm sounded in his ear. Half of the deep blue light in the surroundings was suddenly blocked by shadow. The rest of the light violently shook. Some element was causing stress to the structure, and it prompted the people nearby to turn their heads and look, their gazes falling in the direction of the crystal pillar in the center. A ferocious monster could be seen on the inner side of the crystal wall. It was over 15 meters in diameter, and it moved like a high-speed plane. In the blink of an eye, it crossed over several dozen meters of water. It charged to the edge of the crystal pillar, fiercely crashing into it. The magnitude of the noise was startling. The power of the charge of such a colossal creature was shocking and terrifying, even though a crystal wall stood in its way. A few people attending the party had been stuck to the crystal pillar, observing the beauty of the ocean floor. They never expected this sudden change, and they instinctively cried out in fear. They frantically retreated, and some unfortunately lost control of their legs. These people staggered back and fell with their butts flat on the ground. It was quite shameful. The monster, which looked more like a bat than a fish, wanted to make another frontal impact. It suddenly ascended upward, revealing a deathly white stomach. It practically glided on the inner crystal wall as it rapidly ascended. It used the most direct way to show just how astonishing its wingspan was, as well as the hideous mouths that ran down the sides of its stomach. Oh, who could forget its 10-meter-long slender tail? It was packed densely with bluish-black scales. It resembled a chain whip made of metal, and arcs of electric flame even flared and flowed around it. An enormous body, powerful movement ability, a demonic body structure. These elements formed the image of a terrifying fish monster, and this monster wasn't giving up. After ascending a certain distance in the crystal pillar, it suddenly flipped backward to whirl around the axis of its body. The ocean water churned everywhere the monster passed, and the resulting waves were as sharp as blades. The ocean prawns, both large and small, were all sliced to powder everywhere it passed, only to be sucked into the mouths that ran down the sides of the monster's stomach. What had once been crystal-clear ocean water became turbid in an instant. It reeked completely of blood. Within the churning currents, the horrific monster fish broke away from the limits of a normal person's gaze to disappear without a trace. Though the people attending the party were the elites of top-ranked schools, most of them couldn't avoid being stupefied on the spot from witnessing this sudden and bloody scene. They found it hard to speak for a long time. Yet there was a small portion of people who were able to remain calm and collected, whether it was because they were mentally prepared or their temperaments exceeded the masses. A smaller number of people even laughed with excitement. He Donglu laughed the brightest and the loudest. Those 10 meters away could hear his laughter. This thing is kick-ass. It's a mutant for sure. It has to be a class 2 at least. It's rare to find one as wild as this and still be captured and brought back. Such a ferocious monster fish far exceeded the limits of normal biology. It was indeed a mutant. A professional who was familiar with mutant genealogy would be able to tell that this monster fish stemmed from Mobula, a genus of ray, and was more commonly known as the devil ray. This monster was the mutated result. The normal Mobula species were mild creatures. They had existed on Earth for over 1 million years. They weren't great at attacking, but due to their sturdy body and its strange shape, the genus had become collectively known as devil rays. However, the monster fish within the crystal pillar had been mutated into a form that could truly be called that of a devil, especially just a few moments ago when it engaged in a mindless slaughter of the other oceanic creatures. It made one shudder with fear. Zai Junping had suffered from considerable fright, to the point where he had accidentally bitten the inside of his cheek. His mood worsened, and he couldn't refrain from cursing. That fourth Yao really doesn't want to do business putting this thing in there. He spoke half of what he had intended when he saw Luo Nan, and the others turned their gazes behind him. Zai Junping immediately turned around and was met with the ugly expression of Yao Feng. Zai Junping didn't feel the least bit embarrassed. He just laughed. "What's wrong? Don't you need to serve the young master of the He family?" Yao Feng heard him and instinctively shot him a glare. Then he felt his actions were too shameful. He waved his hand and laughed wryly. "I'm not serving him for now. First, I'll be avoiding him for a bit. One who is near mountains will eventually eat mountain dirt. One who is near oceans will eventually drink ocean water. There are conditions for everything. Of you all, one is an immoral druggie, and one is a farmland owner. You don't need to understand, but we who eke out a living upon the ocean have to deal with the Coastal Defense Force. We have to deal with the He family. Not flattering him is no good, man." Luo Nan inexplicably felt like he had heard the information Yao Feng said once in the past. Before he could ascertain what it was exactly, the hexia vibrated. He wasn't looking for anyone in particular on the psychic wave network, but someone had found him first. Chapter 150, Coupling, Part 1-2. Translator, Strivon. Who is it? Luo Nan's thoughts focused, and he saw a number he had never seen before. Naturally, he was surprised. Just when Luo Nan was subconsciously about to answer the call, he suddenly felt that something was wrong. He swapped to the settings interface with an effort of will, and sure enough, he had already set the communications mode to be restricted. In this mode, only the people in his contact list could engage in real-time communications with him. Everyone else could only leave messages. Yuan had suggested to set the hexia up this way. She said that it was to avoid interferences to the maximum extent so that he could concentrate on his cultivation. Then came the question, how did that number come in? Luo Nan was curious to see who the caller was, but the other party severed the communications request right when Luo Nan was about to pick up. Luo Nan waited a moment, but no one called again. He dialed back the number, yet the system displayed the following message. "The person you are trying to contact is in limited contact mode. Please leave a message." Well then, what was up with this low-level malfunction? It's already been over 10 days. Wasn't the debugging of the psychic wave network over yet? Luo Nan shook his head and temporarily put the matter aside. He shifted his full attention back to the issue with the Divine Yu Gym. To understand the enmity that existed in the martial arts circle, Luo Nan obviously needed to find someone in that circle. But only one person remained after Luo Nan had filtered through all the people he knew in the society. It was Giant Arm, and Luo Nan only knew of him. Giant Arm might not know of Luo Nan. Then I can only find someone I'm closer to. Seems like Crag Burst is the only option. He has a military background, and he's among the top 10 strongest people in terms of physical strength within Xia City. He also has a friendly and lively temperament. He should have some common dealings with the martial artists circle. Luo Nan formulated the wording in his mind and set out a communications request to Crag Burst. However, no one would have expected the system to answer in the same cold tone as before. "The person you are trying to contact is in limited contact mode. Please leave a message." Luo Nan concluded that there was indeed a problem with the psychic wave network. He couldn't help scratching his head. The members of the society were used to the conveniences of the psychic wave network. Very few of them would record the wristband communications numbers down. Luo Nan was no exception. All contact was impossible at this moment. He could only wait. Meanwhile, the rich kids were still going at it. Yao Feng poured out his grievances, but Zai Junping wasn't interested in listening at all. He just asked what concerned him. "Hey, that's a mutant. Did you release it here in Ocean Sky Cloud City to cause chaos and destruction, only to buy it from the other shareholders at a low price?" Hey, don't talk baseless nonsense." Yao Feng's face was completely green now. He hated being unable to cover Zai Junping's mouth. He could only grit his teeth and explain amidst his misfortune. "It's a client who is a distant relative on my mother's side. He loves to collect mutants the most, and had spent a considerable price to custom order this one long ago. He just barely got his hand on it, but no one expected him to drop dead from being overstimulated. He was just watching an underground fight, after all. And so, an excellent merchandise lost a place to call home. It isn't good to release it back to the ocean, so we can only keep it here. We've been dying from headaches for the past few days because of this thing." "You're freaking lying." Zai Junping wasn't fooled. "You may not be able to find cookware in your Yao family, but your place is full of pools where you can put fish. Yet you put this mutant into this simulation ecosphere to ruin it. You know how hard it is to make. This is a source of revenue for you." "Hey, Yao Fu, are you sure you don't have a money-making scheme you're not sharing?" Zai Junping reined in Yao Feng's shoulder as he spoke, beaming all the while. He also furtively winked at Luo Nan. Since Yao Feng was so kind as to deliver himself to their doorstep, there was absolutely no reason for Zai Junping to let him escape. Zai Junping planned to tenaciously hold this predetermined middleman with his gaze. He would use him to get in contact with Tang Yi, and Hu Huying was backing him up by his side. The two acted with a deep level of tacit understanding with each other. Luo Nan could only sit at the sidelines. He waited a long while and listened to the twists and turns of the conversation. He found the whole thing to be boring. Zhu Lei was busy as well. He was still on the phone with those at the Jiaoguan, his feet pacing endlessly in circles. It seemed that things weren't going too smoothly for him. Another moment of silence fell, and Luo Nan's gaze shifted behind him toward the simulated ocean ecology, which had went through a brutal impact. The monster fish had fled to the depths of the crystal pillar after wreaking havoc. Much time had passed since it disappeared without a trace. But the monster fish's power still existed in the areas it had passed, regardless of the passage of time. Many schools of fish, leisurely swimming around, would suffer from a fearsome invisible pressure when they went near these areas, and one by one they burst and scattered. Beautiful purple and vibrant red bloomed within the deep blue light, providing a different kind of wonder and beauty. Luo Nan quietly watched these chaotic shoals of fish. The glow in his eyes circulated, but he didn't open his eyes' orifice for cultivation. It was just a cursory experience. During this process, his feet followed the shoals of fish and moved slowly. By the time he came back to reality, he was already a distance away from Zai Junping and the others. He didn't care. The exchange with Yao Feng wouldn't require him to be present. Plus, with a mere thought, the whole party area would come under the range of his clairvoyance. He wouldn't get lost. He tried using the psychic wave network communications again. It was still not restored. He stopped thinking about it and strolled along the viewing platform. He walked, stopped, and walked, his eyes observing the shoals of fish, his mental senses weaving in and out. Two different realms, two different modes. They were distinct from one another, but possessing matching sources of information allowed a marvelous corresponding relationship to manifest. Luo Nan walked halfway. The information between the mental plane and the material plane corresponded with each other, but this naturally led to an interference between each other. The extent was minimal. It was weaker than the degree of soul strength Luo Nan could transfer from the format barrier, which didn't even have 1% efficiency, by 1,000-fold. Yet there still existed an influence toward the eye's orifice. Such a continuous and unending influence was rare. It was like the earth was being moistened for life to flourish. The water level of the eye's orifice was rapidly restoring and slowly becoming of higher quality. Luo Nan savored the subtleties within. He became spellbound for a time. This should be a good thing, right? He stopped moving. He felt a bit of uncertainty. A sensation was suddenly born from the bottom of Luo Nan's heart. The thoughts in his brain were still a complete mess, but his body moved according to the sensation. He ducked a bit to the side, the distance of 1/100th of a hair, to perfectly evade a scampering petite figure whose head was lowered behind him. But then Luo Nan had his notebook sandwiched under his elbow. It was protruding out, and it caught onto something. It fell to the ground, spread open its pages, and revealed doodled lines. Only rough outlines could be seen. I'm sorry." The girl, who had nearly caused a rear-end accident, apologized in a sentence. She tidied her unkempt hair and bent over to pick up the fallen notebook. Her fingertips had just touched a page of the notebook when she suddenly became aware who it belonged to. She lifted her head in astonishment. Junior Nan. Luo Nan went oh and responded, "Senior Sister Tian, what a coincidence." The person who had bumped into Luo Nan was none other than Tian Si. She laughed as she picked up the notebook and returned it to him. "It's not a coincidence. Those who participate in this party will eventually meet. Are you dressed as a doctor?" Tian Si slightly tilted her head to the side. She sized up Luo Nan's attire, and the action made the drawing board she hung from her shoulder shake a bit. Luo Nan laughed with a look. "Sister is dressed as an artist." Luo Nan had taken professional fine arts classes to learn speed sketching. He was familiar with the wardrobe of a professional. Tian Si had dressed cleverly. The only difference between how she was dressed now and how she usually dressed at school was the drawing board. Yet she still displayed a gentle, refined, and beautiful temperament. She instantly went up a grade when paired with the tool. Anyone would be convinced that she was a female artist who went out to collect local cultural materials. In any case, Luo Nan's notebook had most likely caught onto this drawing board. Tian Si answered, all smiles. "I've always been in the design school, though right now I'm placing a heavy emphasis on industrial design. I've pursued a bit of the arts in my early years. What do you think? Am I dressed all right?" "It matches you quite well." Luo Nan's words came straight from the heart, but he had no intention of continuing the conversation. Right now, he was in a restless state of mind. He just said a few words for the sake of courtesy and intended to bid farewell. But Tian Si pursed her lips into a laugh. Her attitude showed that she still wanted to talk. "Junior Nan's costume is a bit strange." It wouldn't be proper for Luo Nan to ignore her, so he just sincerely asked, "What's strange about it?" "I just feel that Junior Nan shouldn't be a doctor. It's a pure feeling." Tian Si used her fingers to charmingly draw circles by the sides of her head. Then, she pointed at the loose-leaf notebook clasped under Luo Nan's arm. "You also have that prop. It stands out a bit." Luo Nan simply said, "I brought it with me without thinking. It's a habit." Luo Nan said some boring words, and he finally realized the bizarreness of the whole thing. Their conversation was merely superficial. If Tian Si was looking for someone to chat with, she shouldn't have chosen him. Having thought this far, a deeper sensation was born in Luo Nan's heart. He subtly focused his will, and he saw a young man just over 20 to the side behind him. The young man was dressed similarly to Luo Nan, playing the role of a doctor. He had a tall and straight stature, and he had handsome and bright facial features. But the gaze he had cast over them was filled with ill intent. Tian Si should be able to see this person from her perspective, but she acted as if she hadn't. She simply chatted with Luo Nan, beaming all the while. Luo Nan could more or less guess the situation from looking at the movements of the young doctor's expression. He mentally shook his head. Had Tian Si come over in the hope that he would take some heat off her? No one who was able to attend a friendship party between the 5 schools was someone who could be easily dealt with. Luo Nan was young, and he wasn't tall. It was a bit funny to be used as a shield. As Luo Nan mulled over how to lay the situation bare in a few words, Tian Si began flattering him. "I took a few extra peeks at what you drew. Junior Nan's line drawing fundamentals are quite solid. If you can get into the design school and inherit the family legacy, why, that would be a story to behold." Family legacy. Luo Nan's heart shivered. His original train of thought scattered in an instant. All that was left were chaotic emotions. He didn't know what to say for a time. Tian Si put her hands together in contrition. "Apologies, Junior Nan. I found it very odd last time at Frost River Reality. A bunch of youths from the Mo family, and only you had a different last name. I asked Mo Q more about you, and I heard Tian Kai mention some rumors and circumstances around you and his Mystic Arts Research Society. I was curious, and I looked up your profile. Only then did I find out that you are the child of senior brother Zheng Heng and senior sister Qingwen." Yes, that was right. Luo Nan's parents had indeed studied at the school's design institute. Tian Si was absolutely correct when she mentioned his family legacy. Tian Si stepped closer, and her mannerisms became more intimate as well. "Actually, for these past few days, I've always wanted to have the chance to thank Junior Nan." Luo Nan's brain was a bit slow in understanding. "What?" "Some time ago, I was selecting my graduate design topic. At the same time, I also sought to be a graduate student of Pan Wen, Professor Pan, but several of my topic selections were shot dead time and time again." Tian Si's glowing eyes gazed at Luo Nan's face. She whispered, "I was really out of options, but luckily Junior Nan's matter gave me the inspiration I needed. I proposed a research topic anew based on senior sister Qingwen's coupling design theory from back in the day, and it finally got accepted. Senior sister Qingwen is Professor Pan's most outstanding pupil. Professor Pan saw the topic I chose, and her eyes immediately went red. I know, I got lucky and scored big. I owe it all to senior sister Qingwen." That's a wrap for this installment. Thank you all for watching and supporting Lord of the Stories. If you enjoyed this tale, please hit the like button, share it, and subscribe for more amazing stories. You can also explore other series updated daily in our playlists. Have a fantastic day, and see you in the next episode.